them as well. What a move for the 48. Oh, look at this, and onto the straight they come.
Brilliant move there from the number 40 to make it through. That left-hander sliding up the inside, going up now over Hawthorne Hill, down Pilgrim's Drop, and it's brilliant stuff here at Brands Hatch.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to RaceSpotTV and welcome back to the World GT Championship. This is the technical round for races number 12 and 13 of this season, coming to you today from Monza. My name is Ron Mullins. Paul Smith is out on vacation this week, and joining me in the commentary booth, we have Lorenzo Bonder. Lorenzo, welcome to this series. It has been a brilliant ride ever since the season started off back in January, but we head to the Temple of Speed for the latest round of this championship. The technical races. First up, coming up, is the 30-minute long race, but the National Park of Speed, any race like that can go by in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, just like that. And I like that you wait for the drop. That's the best thing, you know. I've been missing the trumpet, so be very honest with you. So I got to thank you on that end. But yeah, we're coming back to our technical round before we go into the next entrance round here in the championship. So it's going to be quite cool to see how the draft action is going to look like on the Italian track.
It's going to be draft heavy. It's going to be a race where we're going to see a lot of dive bombs, but it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. I said National Park of Speed. That's actually Road America, but that's neither here nor there. But there's a 7th track that we visited thus far this season of this absolutely brilliant calendar. Still got some great racing action to hold you over between now and the end of the season on May the 5th. Coming up in 1 week's time, we got the Road Atlanta Endurance Race, 1 hour and 45 minutes. Just a whole bunch of racing action to look forward to. Here's how it looks as it stands stands currently in this season. Dino Lombardi finds himself in the championship lead. He's been very fast, had his 4-race win streak come to an end last time out of the Hockenheim ring, but he still finds himself in the championship lead in the pro standings. 872 points on the board at the moment, pretty significant margin between himself and Alexander Davidson in P2. Ross McFarland is slotted in third, but Ross McFarland is not going to be joining us for the rest of this season. There's been some swapperoos at the WSR Esports Buckhecker team, but he is still in third as it stands currently in the pro standings. Anders Meyer, James Boume currently slotted fourth and fifth. We have Alex Cohen, Lorenzo Castellani, Alessio Bonino, P8, Eric Rosseth, and Adam State, my apologies, rounding out Euro top 10. Moving over to the Pro-Am standings, it's been a story of dominance thus far for Adam Watson. 581 points on the board in that incredibly competitive Pro-Am category. Finds himself with a rather significant cushion between himself and Will Guthrie in P2. Jack Osborne rounding out your top 3 at the moment in the Pro-Am standings. All those drivers within the 500-point bracket. Then you have to go back to Paul Webster in 4th, Nikolai Agard in 5th, Richard Simnor, Taylor Lane, Joe Newman, Dan Blackwell, and Michael Gray rounding out your top 10 in the Pro-Am standings. Gotta take a look at Am, where it was looking rather up in the air, but Aiden Carner has really kicked it into overdrive over the past couple of races. He finds himself in the midst of a 4-race win streak. Gonna try and extend that to 5 and 6 today. He's in front of Tom Stanley, quite a significant margin there. Dan McCauley, who has won some races thus far this season in the AM category, slotted in 3rd. Ben Altria in 4th. Simon Andre Livingston in P5. Grisada Thasang in P6. Benjamin Gregory in 7th. Luca Monroe in P8. Jack London in 9th. And Jesse Payne Wilkins rounding out your top 10 in the AM standings. And with the drivers taken care of, let's take a look at the teams. WSR Esports Buckkicker lead the pro standings at the present moment. 1,904 points on the board. Pretty big margin between themselves and the 07 Racing team in second. WSR Next Level Racing round out your top 3 in the pro standings. You can see the rest of the teams slotted at there inside the top 10 in the team pro category. Let's take a look at the team AM standings, where it's Prestina Nomad currently slotted at the front, 1,021 points on the board. Series 1 Racing slot in P2. DCW Racing Blue, try saying that 5 times fast, rounding out the top 3 in the team team AM standings. I can trust the charm with that as well. But with the points taken care of, we can get our minds switched over to this qualifying session. 1.5 minutes left to go. The AM and the Pro-Am drivers have already hit the track. Now we've got the pros at there, and Dino Lombardi in that number 78 Acura, as he spent a decent chunk of this season back up at the front.
Yeah, and for Dino's basically a little bit of a pressure because it is home. You could call it his home track, being Italian, of course. So it's a little bit of a moment for Dino to try to retain the advantage that he has on Alex Davidson and Alex, respectively, in second place. The gap is not a wholly big between them, 72 hundredths of a second between them. Let's see how Lewis Ward will do in terms of lap time. Doesn't seem to be an improvement. What the number 22.
Yeah, Lewis Ward still slotted in 18th as it stands at the present moment in this qualifying session. Not a whole lot of time left to go, though, for these racers, so it is certainly crunch time with an absolutely packed racetrack. Alexander Davidson in the number 1 car enters his way into the Ascari chicane for what's going to be the last time before that checkered flag comes out in this qualifying session. Davidson's been quick, and he's off the back of a win in the second race at the Hockenheim ring 1 week ago. He's got to be a bit of a thorn in the side to Dino Lombardi, who's in the pit, so Lombardi not going to try and improve on his time. Alessio Bonino jumping up to P3 in the dying breaths of this qualifying session. That's a pretty good lap time from him. Just touching on the times in practice, Dino Lombardi was the quickest pro driver in that practice session, set a 1:45.642 in the process. But Davidson coming across the line now. Will it be an improvement from the driver of the number 1 Porsche to slip his way up into the provisional pole? It will not be from him. However, Ethan Critchley in the number 97 car jumping his way up to P4.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a minor improvement from Davidson, though. He was a little bit faster, but is not fast enough to catch Lombardi. Raleigh Jaffe as well. You can see from the coming into the final corner as he's from Effect Simulation. So, you know, one of the guys that have been kind of like impressing with this Corvette usually a car that has power under steer coming out of the corners, but whenever he goes on the straight line, is a speedy car, and his lap time isn't going to be in a massive improvement, and is not going to put him anywhere inside the top 5.
And let's see how some of these drivers can do in the late stages of this qualifying session with the checkered flag out. Here's Anders Meyer in the number 20 machine. This Racing Lab Esports Mustang has been quick all throughout this season. He's yet to grab a win, though, and very wiggly coming out of the Ascari chicane. These drivers got to be very wary of hitting the curbs. I think Anders Meyer decided to call it a quits and test the crash testing abilities of that Mustang in that small little flat app list between the Ascari chicane and Parabolic. Here's Daniel Ola and the number 99 machine heading his way out of the final corner right now, currently slotted in P11. This will not be an improvement from him in this qualifying session, as he's not looking like he will be improving at the end of it all, as he crosses the line and does not change his spot. So I believe that will just about do it for this qualifying session. We could take a look at the starting grid for this race, and it's going to be Dino Lombardi in that Grid and Go Esports number 78 Acura, grabbing the spot that he usually has, starting from the pole, a little bit slower than he was in practice, but certainly going to have a heck of a lot of pace come time for this first of 2 races here this evening. Alexander Davidson going to join him on the front row in the number 1 car. Alessio Benino will start in 3rd alongside Ethan Critchley, starting this race in 4th. We have Alex Cohen starting in 5th, next to Marley Joff in P6. And then looking at the drivers right behind them, it continues with Anders Meyer in 7th, Lorenzo Castellani in P8, Daniel Ola in 9th, Eric Seth running out your top 10 in the WSR Next Level Racing car. Starting in P11 is going to be James Boume in the number 28 car. Adam Watson will grab your Pro-Am pole, which is a familiar spot for him all throughout this season. Arthur Thurtle will start in lucky number P13 next to Joe Newman, another Pro-Am competitor, starting in 14th. Alessandro Torchia, my apologies, will start in P15 next to Michael Gray in 16th. Michael Advoca going to be starting this race in 17th next to Aiden Young in P18. And looking at the drivers right behind them, it continues on with David Mendoca and David Baker starting in 19th and 20th respectively. Lewis Ward dropped down to 21st at the end of that qualifying session. Jonathan Walker in 22nd, Kevin Simpson in 23rd, Jack Osborne in P24. It continues on with Aiden Carter starting in 25th, Adam State in 26th, Dan McCauley in 27th, Paul Webster in P28, Jesse Payne Wilkins in 29th, Simon Andre Livingston will start this race in 30th. Richard Simnor will start in 31st. Josh Boot in 32nd. Ben Altria in 33rd. William Guthrie in 34th. Phil Samways will start in 35th next to Benjamin Gregory in P36. We have a few more starters left to go through. Cameron DeBastos in 37th. Adam Hedgecock in 38th. Drew Fletcher will start in 39th. Luca Monroe in 40th. Alistair Pollock will start in 41st next to Chris Chatterton starting in 42nd. And then we have a few more rows left to go through. Jan Van Pruis will start in 43rd. Taylor Lane in 44th. Andy Scheel will start in 45th next to Stephen Kernick, rounding out your 46 car starting grid. And we are able to get through all of them before they even started out on this formation lap. But Lorenzo, this 30-minute race that we have coming up, it's going to be a hectic one for these drivers, but they need to not lose sight of the fact that just being there at the checkered flag is going to be oh so important.
Yeah, and they have also to keep in fact that they're going to have the spinning wheel eventually, right? And that spinning wheel of doom always brings out some chaos depending on the races, right? So it's going to be quite interesting. One more thing that are going to be also dealing and not being concerned is the sunny day, right? It's a sunny day in Virtual Italy. They're not going to have to concern with a 30-minute race under rain like they have on Hockenheim last time by.
And hearing as well from our producer, Mr. Hugo Luis, that Jack Sedgwick is at the tail end of the field. He was banned from taking part in that qualifying session. So 37 drivers set to take the start of this race in a couple of moments' time. Lorenzo, I have a bad feeling about turn number 1. I mean, turn 1 at Monza and a massive pack of race cars go together about as well as on a peanut butter and a hand grenade. So I think we're going to be in for a rough one.
Yeah, it's like massive. If you go side by side or just single file, it's kind of like committing a crime of sorts in Monza. It's kind of like you breaking off the pasta and you're trying to cook it with the pasta breaking off in Italy. Someone would call it a crime. Some would call it a alternate form of cuisine. Even though I would say the former than the latter being Italian as well. So I'm looking forward to see how this race is going to go, because it's 30 minutes, not a lot of time. They're going to be moving. That's one thing for sure.
Yeah, that is for certain in this race that we have coming up. A lot of these drivers going to look to kick off the second half of this season in style. 22 races in all, already have 11 down, 11 left to go. We're going to have 2 knocked out by the end of today, waiting for that pace car to come down pit lane and bring the field back into the hands of our front row sitters. It's Dino Lombardi in a familiar spot to how he's been all throughout this season. Let's see how this race is going to work out well for him. The green flag is out, and the drivers are on their way, heading down that start-finish straightaway off into turn number 1. Let's see what these drivers try and do once it comes times for there. That's not a spot where you want to go for some overtakes on lap 1, but it looks like these drivers still going to risk it for the biscuit. Go side by side off through that section. This is going to be tense for these drivers. It's going to be tight, it's going to be tricky, and it's going to be a successful maneuver maybe from Alexander Davidson to take the race lead. Dino Lombardi and himself side by side, heading off through turn number 3 right now, down into the second chicane. It's going to be a battle last late breakers between these two drivers. Will Alexander Davidson on that inside line be able to get that move done? Let's see. He holds on to it, and he's going to shuffle Lombardi off. Lombardi still holding his own on the inside line. Dino Lombardi in the 78 car clearly here to fight. As looking Ethan Critchley in the number 97 car, looking to get dicey with those drivers as well.
Absolutely, and somehow, some way, Myra actually survived the 0-7 sandwich coming out of the red field chicane, and a little bit of a move up and some chaos off in the back as they exit Lesmo 2.
These drivers already coming to blows. We may need to take a look at some replays to see some of the further back drama that has befallen some of these drivers. But at the front of the field, still side by side with Davidson and Dino Lombardi. Lombardi going to get that move done to slip his way up into the race lead yet again, this time heading down into the Ascari chicane. The best way I could describe the racing action at Monza, regardless of what kind of car you find yourself in, it's basically a 150+ mile-an-hour game of leapfrog. There's a spinner a little bit farther in the back coming out of the chicane. That right there is one of the next level cars spun around on corner exit. Not sure who that was. It was one of the Acuras. May have potentially been Alessandro Torchio. Was it Baker?
I think it was Baker.
Oh, that's a tough moment for him to have a mistake like that right at the very beginning of this race. But hey, if you're going to spin, you may as well get it taken care of right at the very beginning, because you still have 28 minutes left to go in this race. Heading down into turn number 1, Lombardi over Davidson, over Ethan Critchley. These drivers going side by side a little bit farther in the back. Let's take a look at this side by side fight involving Adam State heading down into turn number 1. Despite it being treacherous on lap 1 and still being a little bit dangerous on lap 2, going to be a bit more of an inviting overtaking opportunity for these drivers as we see them single fly out coming out of the chicane.
Absolutely, and some cars eventually are going to understeer when coming side by side into those chicanes by being, nearly down 90-degree chicanes as the car goes off just as in the back of the frame into Curva Grande. We still need to know who that is. Looked to be Richard Simnor, who just came out of the corner and hit hard the wall, potentially at turn number 2.
Looking through, we've had a lot of drivers get struck by falling anvil thus far, and here's a moment heading down into the chicane. That's Michael Gray in the 273 car getting spun around. He was stuck on the outside. There you can see the drama coming out of Lesmo 2. Multiple cars getting stacked up in that collision. That is real sketchy. Thankfully, it wasn't a total track blocker for these drivers, but that could have ended in tears regardless.
Absolutely, and we know that that is the worst spot you can actually get into a situation as we look through Eris Roset's perspective. Double hit, could be triple hit. No, not a triple hit for Roset. We're going to look from Mendonca's perspective now as he makes a fumble out of the Lesmo 2. Lesmo 2 already killing 2 people early on in this race. It's going to be a tricky corner getting that one right.
Now, one thing to raise him at the Lesmos, maybe it's just my perspective as a mediocre sim racer at best, but I feel like I can never get the line heading off through those corners well, as we see the moment for David Baker in the number 6 car, spinning coming out of the corner, and that's how he careened his way down the running order, was running solidly inside the midfield, and he now drops all the way down to last, which is where he was at the end of that first lap. Tough break for him.
Yeah, and we're going to look what happened to Simnor. Apparently some contact with the car on the inside of Curva Grande and completely thrown off the track. That Mustang from the DCW Racing, and unfortunately he couldn't maybe get back on track. And Simon and Jan Levinson also having the similar issue Baker had on the Ascarish game. Same place, different cars, but the victim, you know, is gonna have the same cause of death.
Yeah, we nearly saw another death as he tried to get that car spun back around in the right direction. I'm not sure who that was in a Corvette that came barreling towards the scene of that near accident. Thankfully avoided him. However, that could have ended in tears regardless. Looking through how it stands in the very early stages of this race, Dino Lombardi leading it and trying to extend that gap to himself and Alexander Davidson, albeit to very little effect as it's still about 0.4 of a second teetering around that barrier between those two drivers at the north end of the field. Adam Watts is holding on to the lead in the Pro-Am category at the moment. It's been a rather good season for Watson up to this point. Looking through, got the season kicked off at the Nürburgring in style with a win in the first race there, and ever since then he's racked up a couple of wins, but as of late he's found himself being hot and cold this season, for lack of a better term. Won the second race at Silverstone, then didn't win it at Interlagos, then won the second race at Interlagos later on that day. Also won the first race at the Hockenheim Ring, but did not grab the checkered flag in the second race. Instead, it was David Mendonca grabbing his first win of the season in that event 1 week ago. But Watson in the 281 car running in a very good spot as it stands at the moment. P9 solidly inside the top 10, and you have to go back to 12th to find the next Pro-Am driver in the form of Joe Newman. This is a good start thus far for Adam Watson.
Absolutely, I think it would be the perfect start for him. A little bit of a bounce back. What happened to race 1 at Silverstone? He had because I think it's not Silverstone, Hockenheim, where you could see everything in the rain, right? I think the rain brought up a little bit of everything on that race. It was chaotic from the get-go. As now we're shift eyes to Steven Koenig, and it's going to be quite interesting in this race, in my point of view, for these guys in the Pro-Am, and because I think they are the ones who need to make the more, I'm not going to say desperate moves of sorts, Ron. I think it's going to be more like they're going to have to move up to ensure they have a little bit of a better point situation as we're going to be approaching very difficult tracks as in the remainder of the championship, like Road Atlanta and so forth.
One thing that is super important to raise in the context of the Pro-Am and Am championship fights is a matter of being super consistent all throughout the season. Adam Watson, I mean, he's been incredibly fast. He had a 3-race win streak. He had the win to kick the season off, and ever since then, he's grabbed another 2 victories. So he's been quick all throughout the season, but he doesn't find himself with a big championship gap, and part of the reason why that is the case is down to a little bit of inconsistency that I feel like has struck everybody in the Pro-Am category. So just being there at the end of these races can make a huge difference. Doesn't matter if you're running at the front and going for those insane moves, just being in a good consistent spot all throughout this season can make a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Consistency makes championships, as Myra gonna move inside the top 5, overtaking Alex Caon on that for Mustang. But like you said before, it's going to be key for everybody to be consistent. I know consistency makes championships. Of course, grabbing some victories help out in the class as well, but it doesn't matter if you win 3 but you stay P last on the other ones. It's not going to help your cause, not at all, if you're in a long championship like this.
Yeah, this championship is incredibly long. 22 races towards these drivers and just a wide variety of racetracks that we're going to be visiting all season long. Already have visited in the first half and will be visiting in the second. It's so important for these drivers to try and stay in the right frame of mind for these events. The best way I could describe contending for a championship, and I say this as someone who desperately needs to cut their nails, you don't cut your nails with a chainsaw. You go out with a nail clipper and a nail file. You don't need to make big hacks at it. You just need to get those small little incremental gains every now and then, and that will make a huge difference. But as we go back to the front of the field and find this 3-car pack, it's currently being tailed by Ethan Critchley. We can see him in his perspective in his rig, currently running in 3rd in the number 97 machine. The gap to himself and Alexander Davidson is ballooning out a little bit, and as I say that, the gap between Lombardi and Davidson has increased a teeny tiny bit. It was around 0.4 of a second not terribly long ago, has increased to about 6.5 tenths. But those small little gains, they can make a huge difference. You don't need to gain a second in 1 lap, but just gaining a couple of tenths every now and then can be what decides it for you.
Yeah, if you gain 1/10 a lap in a track like this and you break away from the let's say the second and 1.2, 1.3 second gap, and that's where the draft range, the optimal draft range for these cars would eventually be. That's golden. You're going to be golden for the remainder of your race and potentially be able to survive the remainder of the race as well. But it's quite complicated because Monza, even though it is a vast track, some of the corners are very tricky. We talked about the Lasmos. Ascari is very, very tricky as well, as we're going to see Jonathan Walker on the outside. They're going to try to make an overtake on the down on Rajah chicane. Can he make it though? He's not going to be able to make it. He's going to fold it into single foul once again.
Yeah, and trying to get a move done on Aiden Carter, who's actually, no, that's not Aiden Carter. That's another Aiden Young right in front of him in the 427 car. Young, a very fast driver on the iRacing platform. I've covered many a race with him being super, super quick, and a lot of those series that you can also catch here on RaceSpotTV. But with that not so subtle plug out of the way, want to raise one thing talking about the other drivers that we were seeing at the front of this field. I'll hold off on that point in a couple of moments. Jonathan Walker may go for a move, did not go for the move, heading off into the Ascari chicane, but certainly was closing up in the draft. Ethan Critchley, who you see in third at the moment in the number 97 machine. We haven't really talked about this thus far in this race, but he is the replacement for Austin McFarlane. McFarlane running third in those pro standings, is out for the rest of the season as side-by-side racing, heading down into the Parabolica, still trying to get that move done on Aiden Young, and yet again unsuccessful, going to remain in P15 and nearly coming to blows, coming out of the corner. But yeah, Ethan Critchley making his season debut in that number 97 machine and certainly flexing his muscles very early on. But getting back to the racing action, we see on track right now, side by side, down that start-finish straightaway off into turn number 1. This is going to be a dicey battle between these two drivers, and let's see how it shakes out. We finally see a Swaparoo in position, heading down into turn 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Walker got through, and Aiden Young just, from what it looks like, struggling a little bit on that Acura, on that fiercely forward Acura, which I was going to bring that up. But for me, it's a little bit strange to see Aiden Young not inside the top 10 of sorts, knowing that he's a very fast driver, young driver as well. Pun not wholly intended, but it is there though. But it's quite strange because we've seen him time and time again battle for wins in other categories like GT4s, for example. So seeing the struggle on the McLaren though is a little on the Acura is a bit weird, but nevertheless is going to be quite an interesting move forward, as he's on the WSR Esports, the Bruzy, not fiercely forward anymore. Okay.
Yeah, one thing to raise talking about the Acura is it was very fast throughout season 1 of 2025 here, and of course, considering we did have that season swap in the 1 week break between the last round of the championship and this one here today, we got to think about how that Acura was maybe tweaked a little bit by iRacing between last season and this season. Whether or not there's any sort of BOP adjustment that will mute that Acura's performance a teeny tiny bit remains to be determined. Dino Lombardi certainly took advantage of that in the number 78 machine and is still doing that, considering he finds himself in the race lead, but not pulling away really at all from Alexander Davidson, as those two cars still within striking distance of one another, as side by side hang down into turn number 1. That's James Boumet going for the dive on Daniel Ola, and it did not work for him in the 28 machine.
And Ola just saying Ola basically in good Portuguese, but with the Italian flag right there. Ooh, near contact between in one of the 07 Acuras and one for Mustang. Torchio surviving the whole ordeal. That could have been deadly for him as they go through Curva Grande, and Torchio is eventually going to have the inside if he remains side by side coming into the corner.
And let's see if they will still be side-by-side come time for the braking zone. He manages to clear well before they even thought about breathing on that brake pedal. So well done to Torchio to get that move done. Riding on board with two cars behind him, this is Adam State in the WSR Next Level Racing car, currently in 19th in the number 18 car. Maybe looking to get a move done on the Mustang in front to slip his way up into 18th in the number 18 car. Have a little bit of circularity to that in a rather odd way. That's Jack Osborne right in front of of him, and we'll know right behind him is Aiden Carter, who's been a man on a mission as of late in the AIM category here in the World GT Championship. He has 4 wins straight. He's been pretty quick all throughout this season, but he's really kicked on the Hyperjets, or if anyone's ever seen the movie Spaceballs, he's kicked on the Cuisinarts as of late. He's been super quick, and even in the practice session earlier on, he was the quickest AM driver, saying a 1 minute 46.829, and incidentally, talking about those practice results shows you how close this field is. The fact that his fastest time in that practice session was actually tied with the other Pro-Am driver, Paul Webster, but Aiden Carter, very fast as of recent.
Absolutely, and it's something to be very noteworthy. You're always going to have these fast AM drivers. It's going to be impressive. Oh, contact between Bonino and one of the WSR drivers. I think that was just a grab over here as they're battling for third. Critchley struggling that Porsche a little bit, as like you said before, replacement for Ross McFarlane, but like we said before, always featured over here in the WGTC, always have podium as well. So yeah, we're eventually going to be able to see Critchley fight for podiums once again. I think he's just getting the feel for the car at the moment.
And as we continue to follow him, this time riding on board with him in that number 97 machine, lost out on that spot to Bonino heading off through that first chicane. They broke the elbows out. They're muscling each other around the racetrack, and I think that really reflects on a certain sense of urgency that has been raised as of late in this race. Now past the halfway mark with 14 and a half minutes left on the board. These drivers may be going to break the elbows out and start throwing haymakers at their competitors, but look at that moment from Critchley. He's getting up on the seat. They're having to shake that very terrifying moment off from him coming out of Ascari.
Q shaking cat meme and Shaquille O'Neal as well. But yeah, survived the exit of Ascari. Ascari, man, I hate. Can I tell you, I hate that corner, man. It's just so tricky for you to get outside because you're already switching the car such in a quick fashion that it kind of like exerts some stress in the tires, and it's easy for you to get some snap overs here coming out of the corner. But he held it pretty tightly right there. I think another important thing about that was 07 moving up one spot and potentially grabbing more points in the team championship as they are fighting tooth and nails against the WSR Esports Buckkicker team.
And 07 Racing with a rather stacked lineup. One of their drivers is running in third for now, but Ethan Critchley in that number 97 machine looking to try and get that move done again. Heading off into the second chicane. Let's see if he will be able to get it done in that Porsche. Oh, banging doors and banging wheels. Heading off through the section. That is going to create a little bit of a stack up of cars right behind. You can see Anders Meyer and Alex Cohen within striking distance of those racers as well. It was a two-car battle. They kind of lost touch with the likes of Alexander Davidson and Dino Lombardi a little bit farther up the road, but in all of that, they now have Meyer in the number 20 car and Cohen in that number 95, acting as a thorn in their side.
Absolutely, and it's good to see Meyer in this fold as well. Raced with Meyer many years ago. Very fast driver, especially on TCs. He's a guy that always a sleeper, but doing so well. I think he's found the stride with that Ford Mustang that I think he's able to extract the best setup out of it. Wondering how aggressive he's going to be with 12 minutes and 20 seconds to go in this first race that we're going to have on the technical round.
Anders Meyer choosing that Mustang, which when it was first introduced into iRacing, if we're being completely honest, it was a little bit of a dog. It had great straight line speed, but through the corners, it's like trying to drive around a trash bag full of about 1,000 pounds of lasagna. It was never a good run in that Mustang, but thankfully it has improved, and we're seeing that improvement as he's trying to get a move done on Bonino, heading down into the first chicane. Bonino on the inside, switching out to the outside. Alex Cohen getting a fantastic view of all of this in the number 95 machine as the 20 and the 33 still side by side coming out of the corner. Now through the long seemingly never-ending right-hander. Who's going to win out in this battle? Is it going to be the straight line speed of Meyer in that Mustang, or is he going to have to get done into the braking zone of the second chicane? Looks like he's finally able to get it done, but that allowed Ethan Critchley to extend that gap a little teeny tiny bit. He's shaking off those drivers like a bad case of fleas, but they're still within striking distance.
Yeah, it's going to be a good breathing room for Critchley for the time being, as Myra, like I said before, was part of a 0-7 sandwich coming into the Reticolo chicane, but survived the ordeal coming out of the corner, and now within striking distance of podium places here in this first race of the doubleheader. So it's going to be quite interesting if he's going to be able to have the grunt on that for Mustang to get closer to Critchley, because Critchley is not being able to break away that much from all these four guys, as you have the Racing Lab Ford and 307 cars right behind them.
And one thing to raise, bringing up the discussion that I was going to raise about Anders Meyer a couple of moments ago before I went off on a small little tirade talking about the handling qualities of that Mustang when it first got added into iRacing. First time I ever commentated Anders Meyer in a GT3 series of any kind, he was running pretty good in that BMW, which is probably the closest to an equal that you can find with the Mustang on the iRacing platform. Both those cars, rather massive chunks of earth with four wheels and some wings bolted onto them and some pretty paint schemes as well. So Anders Meyer seeming to be at home in a car that big.
Yeah, you don't be afraid to call them the big boys.
Yeah,
the big boys.
Big boy.
Yeah, they're not going to be like the M8s though, like the GTE M8, but they're around there.
I remember the memes of the BMW M8 GTE car. That I still absolutely adore the GTE era. I used to be a big Porsche guy in that period of time, so I may be a little bit biased in that regard, because the two teams I like the most were Porsche and Corvette. So I think I may have been a little bit biased in that regard back then, but still in an absolutely wonderful era of GT3 machinery on iRacing. I gotta say, credit where credit's due to the people at iRacing. The fact they've been able to bring in so many more GT3 cars over the past couple of seasons, it's been fantastic as of late. I have a feeling we are going to continue to have that going on as the years go on. Anders Meyer close to the back of Ethan Critchley, heading off through the Ascari chicane right now. You can see those drivers also whacking the curbs in these race cars.
Yeah, and you can see already the V8 grunt of that Ford already chasing down Critchley as he stays in the middle. Is Myra going to go on the inside for the Norwegian driver? No, he's not going to go on the inside. He's just going to cook Critchley around the corner. You can see a little bit of a twitchiness coming out of the Porsche, coming out into the final corner. It's going to help Myra's cause as the car looks planted. And there you go. The straight line speed battle between the Porsche and the BMW. Sorry, yeah. And
you can see those drivers, oh my God, both running themselves off the track and banging doors heading down into turn number one. These drivers breaking their elbows out in a big way. I don't have a good feeling about this at all. And now Alessio Bonino trying to get involved in that in the number 33 machine, understandably backing out of it as these drivers continue to battle tooth and nail. Will note Bonino, Cohen, and Lorenzo Castellani all running line astern. We'll raise that in a couple of moments. Some of these drivers continue to go side by side. This time heading down into the second chicane. Meyer stuck on the outside line, gonna back out of it, understandably so. The outside line heading off through that second chicane. There's only one fate that you have heading off for a maneuver like that, and that is whacking the crap out of the inside curbs.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's you're toying with death around those corners. As we now got other cars in the party as well. James Boumet coming into the fifth car into this train, and also the Ola Daniel coming into as well. Are they going side by side around the Ascari? No way they're gonna make it out alive.
Oh, I don't have a good feeling about this at all. Those drivers covered by inches, but well done to Anders Meyer. Again, that move done around the outside. I'm not sure how he was able to make that work, but he did to slip his way up into the final podium spot. This now going to allow Alessio Bonino to get a move done on Ethan Critchley. All those 07 cars running in 5th, 6th, and 7th, respectively. That'll be a big point haul for those drivers. I may have just jinxed it, though. James Boumet gets a move done on Castellani to make it now a 5, 6, and 8 for the 07 racing cars. They're still side by side coming out of Parabolica on to that start finish straightaway. These drivers starting to get the weave on as well, breaking that drift, which, as we know in races at Monza, is super important. These drivers continue to battle tooth and nail. Dino Lombardi still in the race lead as these drivers right behind, just barely inside the top 10, are giving us a wonderful show to keep our eyes on.
Absolutely, but you gotta admit, your nails must be biting a little bit because you're seeing all these cars battling so hard against each other coming to the corner. It's a little bit of a nerve-wracking moment as Paul Webster, Josh Booth around the same corner. Can they make it around? And Booth is gonna survive the ordeal for the time being. And Webster's gonna have to remain in the fold in the middle of that sandwich once again.
And we'll note as it stands currently, lots of good battles going on in all three of our classes. Dino Lombardi still at the front of the field, though, now extending that gap to 2.5 seconds between himself and Alexander Davidson. Adam Watson is your current leader in the... My apologies there, folks. The Pro-Am category currently being led by Adam Watson. Side-by-side racing heading down into Lesmo number 1. A Mustang and an Acura trading blows and trading paint a little bit on the exit. That's maybe not the smartest idea to be in bang doors there. And NASCAR cars at Martinsville, maybe in GT3s around Monza. Not sure if that's a smart strategy to go about, but these drivers still going to be battling as hard as they can. Entering the final 5 minutes of this first race of the evening, Pridgley and Meyer still battling hard. They're swapping positions back and forth for third at the moment as these drivers continue to trade paint a little bit farther in the back. There they are, side by side, coming out of Parabolica. Look at that, Pridgley in that number 97 machine. Currently on the inside, he will hold on to the inside line into turn number 1, unless Alessio Benino has anything to say about that. Picking a sparring partner, picking a bump drafting partner in the form of Anders Meyer, giving him a small little bit of assistance hanging down that start finish straightaway, trying to give him as much of a chance that he has to get that move done. Contact being made coming out of the corner. Holy cow, do these drivers not fear death?
They don't. Absolutely, they don't. That's as you can see, Bonino moving into the inside of Meyer. Meyer already falling back from 4th to 3rd to 4th to 5th in just a sequence of 3-4 corners. And he's going to have to reset all over again. He's going to have about 3 laps to get back to that 3rd place or so.
Now, only a couple laps left for these drivers to try and gain as many spots and many points as they possibly can. For that 07 racing team, currently being driven by Alessio Benino in 4th, Alex Cohen in P6, and Lorenzo Castellani in 8th. This is going to be a huge point haul for them if they can hold on to these spots and try to avoid a falling anvil crushing down on their head, which, considering how hard they have been racing, may be a little bit easier said than done. We may have a civil war breaking out between the two teammates, though, as Alex Cohen trying to get that move done on his teammate, heading down into Ascari, gets it done clean on the inside, the number 95 car. Haven't seen him make any sort of challenge at Anders Meyer thus far. Clearly wasn't working out too well for the driver, the number 33, in the form of Alessio Benino. He tried getting those moves done. He made them work very briefly, but he wasn't able to hold on to it for too terribly long. Now the 33 at risk of losing another spot to James Boume and that number 28 McLaren, who's really starting to shift gears in that number 28 machine. Daniel Ola in the number 98 car currently running at your top 9, and this massive pack at the front of the field as it stands at the present moment. These drivers putting on one heck of a show and a big shuffle there as Daniel Ola getting a move done on Lorenzo Castellani. So I will refrain from mentioning the 07 team anymore because it feels like every single time I do, they start losing spots.
It's the curse of Monza of sorts. Because, but then again, you cannot call this race stall. Sprint races around Monza, they're always this chaotic of sorts. As we now have Dan McCauley fighting for 23rd place against, from what it looks like, to beat Josh Booth as coming out of the corner, still side by side. And from what it looks like, Josh is going to retain the position for the time being. These drivers still giving us fantastic battles to talk about all throughout this field. Hey, if this 30-minute long race has been entertaining all of you here on RaceSpotTV tonight, imagine what your thoughts are going to be for the 60-minute long race that we have coming up later on this evening. These drivers nearly running each other off into the grass, heading down into the first chicane. Multiple cars going off the track, shortcutting their way through the second chicane. Dan McCauley and Josh Booth booting themselves off the circuit, heading through there. It's going to work out well for Booth, not work very well for McCauley as he's now side by side, heading off through the first Lesmo right now. That's usually not a spot that you see drivers go side by side unless something desperately went wrong, which it certainly did for those drivers heading off through that chicane as they continue to go side by side. Absolutely, and somehow they made it work. I think one just try to put pressure on the other, and both of them made a little bit of a failure. As now Myra is gonna fall back. What happened to the car? The car looks a little bit more broken than usual. He's gonna come to the pit lane.
Something must have gone on with Anders Meyer. I am convinced of it. I'm gonna have to try and figure out what went wrong, because that's not a scheduled pit stop. You don't have to come into the pits in these 30-minute long races. So I'm gonna have to look through to try and figure out what exactly went wrong for Anders Meyer, who's putting together a very well executed drive, but things clearly going from decent to terrible in the span of a couple of moments. I'm looking through, trying to figure out exactly what happened to him. I'm not sure if there's any sort of major incident. I think something must have broken in that car. That, or he has a penalty. He has a penalty. That's the reason why Anders Meyer has come down pit lane. A drive-through right in the dying breaths of this race. That's a heartbreaker.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's unfortunate. Maybe incident points?
I think that may potentially be it. We see another driver slowing. That's Alex Cohen. I wonder if he picked up a slowdown heading off through the second chicane. He's dropping down the road now in P6, dropping behind his teammate of Bonino and nearly at risk of losing another spot to Lorenzo Castellani in the midst of all of that as well. These drivers get a penalty at every 16x, not getting disqualified, mind you, but that's still a rather... That can be hit rather easily in these 30-minute long races. I'm pretty sure we saw it at the Hockenheim ring for the last round of the championship a couple of weeks ago, as we take a look and see Alessio Bonino bunny hopping it through the final chicane. That's coming out of Ascari, hit that inside curve, and that's not going to work out for him at all, but it's working well for Dino Lombardi. This is not going to be his first win of the season. It's going to be anything but for Lombardi as he crosses the line to win this opening race of this technical round here at Monza. It's another win for Lombardi in that 78 machine. That's going to be another win in the Pro-Am category for Adam Watson. The 291 altitude esports by SimSticker's car has been stupidly quick all throughout this season. I think we're going to get another case of deja vu. Aiden Carter in the number 43 Corvette has been on a massive run as of late. He had a 4-race win streak coming into this round. He's going to make that a 5-race win streak here for the opening race of the evening at Monza. That's how it shakes out at the end of this race. Some more drivers left across the finish line. Chris Shatterton maybe trying to get some moves done around the outside here. That's some close quarter stuff between himself. Oh boy, they nearly came to blows. Heading off through Parabolica, these drivers giving us some good battles to talk about all throughout the field. A near photo finish between those drivers as well. But Dino Lombardi capping off a brilliant drive from him here in the opening race. It wasn't easy for him in the early stages. Had to muscle his way past, heading down into the Ascari chicane right towards the mid part of that first lap, but after he got that lead, he grabbed that torch and just ran off into the sunset. Won that race by 3.2 seconds over Alexander Davidson, so that is a rather convincing drive for Dino Lombardi. Clearly in the season swap, that number 78 Acura has not lost out on any pace at all. Still waiting for a few more cars to cross the line at the present moment. This, I believe, unless I am very much mistaken, heading his way around the final chicane is trying to figure out who it is right now. That's Stephen Karnick. There we go. In the number 38 machine. I was getting lost in iRacing. A lot of drivers in this session, must be noticed. So it's a little bit hard to manage that. Credit where credit's due to our producer, Mr. Hugo Luis, in the production truck, who has to be a chameleon looking at about 14,000 different things at once. But before we get into the results, let's take a look at the spinning wheel to figure out what the reverse grid is going to be for the second race. And we're going to have an invert of the top 20. So the top 20 drivers going to get flipped for that 60-minute long race that we have coming up. But Dino Lombardi ends up grabbing the win after 17 laps, finishes 3.25 seconds even in front of Alexander Davidson in the number 1 machine. Ethan Critchley, in his season debut in the WSR Esports butt kicker car, rounds out your podium in third. James Boumet is going to cross the line in fourth. That was a rather good charge from him towards the end of this race. That's followed by Daniel Ola in the number 99 machine in fifth. Alessio Bonino ends up right behind him, P6. Alex Cohen in 7th. Lorenzo Castellani in P8. Adam Watson in 9th. Michael Evdoka is going to round out your top 10 at the end of it all. Arthur Thurtle will finish this race in P11. Joe Newman in 12th. Jonathan Walker in P13. Aiden Young in P14. Lewis Ward is going to finish this race in the number 22 machine in 15th. Alessandro Torchio will finish in 16th. Adam State in 17th. Jack Osborne in P18. Jack Sedgwick, who put on a rousing recovery drive after starting at the tail end of the field, is going to be finishing that race in 19th. And Aiden Carter, the AM winner, is going to grab the reverse grid pole, finishing this race in 20th. Kevin Simpson in 21st, Joshua Boot in 22nd, William Guthrie in 23rd, Paul Webster in 24th, Dan McCauley in 25th, Jesse Payne Wilkins finishes in 26th, Phil Samways in the number 10 machine will finish in 27th, Marley Joff in 28th, Ben Altria in 29th, Benjamin Gregory running at your top 30. Just a few more cars left to go through. It continues on with Andy Shield, the 007 machine, Luca Monroe in the number 56 machine in 32nd, Adam Hedgecock in 33rd, Anders Meyer in 34th. After that, a heartbreaking penalty, Chris Shatterton in 35th, Simon Andre Livingston in 36th, Alistair Pollock in 37th, Drew Fletcher, Cameron DeBastos, David Mendoca running out your top 40, and continuing on with the rest of the finishers. We've got Taylor Lane in 41st, Tom Stanley in 42nd, David Baker in 43rd, Stephen Karnick in 44th, Richard Simnor, Jan-Man Pruitt, Eric Roseth, and Michael Gray all ended up laps down at the end of that race. So that's how it shakes out at the end of the first race of the evening. 30 minutes of racing action. They were certainly chock full of action, but we've got an AM driver starting the second race from that pole position. Man, as much as that first race of the evening was incredible, I have a feeling this 60-minute long race we have coming up is going to be even more intense.
Oh yeah, it's gonna have bits of chaos, some drama here and there. It's gonna be quite interesting how this second race is gonna go, especially for the guys that need results in the pros. So let's just say Davidson's gonna have to move with some sense of urgency. I don't know how his Porsche is gonna take the long run of 60 minutes, right? Because we saw that Porsche maybe drop some pace in comparison to the Acura. So it's gonna be quite interesting how the WSR Esports Bucket team is gonna bounce back to try to get the points away from Dino Lombardi. Remembering that Davidson won the last round of 60 minutes at Hockenheim. It was no rain, but it could work in something in terms of advantage when it comes to pit stops and everything, if there's such a thing for the WSRs, because I've never seen them get a strategy wrong, if you want to call it that, on races that have pit stops.
And one thing to raise when it comes to this reverse grid that we have coming up is the fact that Dino Lombardi, he's going to be starting it down in 20th. And as much as Lombardi is a very fast driver, do not get me wrong, he's been struck by some falling anvils quite a lot in those second races with those reverse grid situations. So that's going to be rather interesting to keep our tabs on. But Lombardi continuing on that pace that we've seen from him all season long, even with the season swap over going from season 1 of 2025 into season 2, Lombardi still quick as always.
Absolutely, and it proves why he's one of the top drivers in iRacing, right? A former driver for the Williams Academy, drove for Williams as well. So he has a lot of background and a lot of pedigree to back up his name, right? So the Italian driver not only driving on his home, but also has the pedigree back to back it up. Wondering how he's gonna drive that Acura. Like you said, there's some faults here and there, especially with these inverted grid, which always had chaos. Which inverted grid never caused the chaos ever in the history of racing? Tell me a race. I dare you to tell me one. I don't think there's one race that you can say was calm and collected from start to finish. And so I expect this to be the same at Monza, which for those who need points, they're gonna try to go for that because they want to have the best point cushion when they come to the endurance round in next time by at Road Atlanta.
Yeah, that Road Atlanta endurance round going to be incredible, but Lombardi showing that same pace as always. It's certainly far from his first win this season. And talking about the chaos that can come from a reverse grid race, my first ever broadcast with the World Sim Racing GT Championship earlier on this year, back in January at the Nürburgring. That second race had a full field invert with some rain in the picture as well. So talk about a trial by fire. Holy cow. Another driver who's been on fire as of late is Adam Watson. It's another win for him in the Pro-Am category. As much as he doesn't have a massive gap in that championship, those wins certainly going to help him out.
Absolutely, and every win that Watson is getting is also resounding wins, if you want to call it that. Of course, there was a little bit of a potential challenge from Newman, because there was quite of a short gap at a certain point at the end of the race. It was about 0.3 of a second between them, but nevertheless, the wins for Watson have been so resounding in the Pro-Am category that I think it is, like we said before, in terms of consistency, you have to be consistent, right? So you have to perform on those second races. You don't have to necessarily win them, but as long as you're getting good, like top 7, top 8 results, and you're surviving the whole ordeal, and you're potentially winning or getting podium spots into the Pro-Am category on race 1 in these technicals, that's important for your sustainability in the lead of the championship.
Yeah, and one driver has been incredibly impressive as of late is Aiden Carter in the AM category, but we'll touch off on that in a couple of moments time. For now, though, for this broadcast here on RaceSpotTV, we're going to take a brief little commercial break, and come time for the second race, the 60-minute long race with the top 20 being inverted. We'll be right back here on RaceSpotTV after these messages.
All of them as well. What a move for the 48. Oh, look at this. And onto the straight they come.
Brilliant move there from the number 40 to make it through that left-hander, sliding up the inside, going up now over Hawthorne Hill, down Pilgrim's Drop, and it's brilliant stuff here at Brands Hatch.
Everybody, welcome back to this evening's coverage here on RaceSpotTV of the World GT Championship. It was a brilliant 30-minute long race to kick off tonight's racing action, but I have a feeling this 60-minute long race is going to be just as exciting as the one that came before. It's myself, Ron Mont, and Lorenzo Bonder with you in the commentary booth here tonight. We also got Hugo Luis working on the cameras in the virtual production hauler and all the graphics and everything that you see here on RaceSpotTV, doing an excellent job as usual. But Lorenzo, 60 minutes of racing action. It's a completely different kettle of fish, despite the fact it's just twice the length of that first race that we had. We got that top 20 invert. We've got some pit stops to worry about as well. This is going to be a 9-day difference, but I have a feeling that the one carryover is going to be the fact that this race that we have coming up, 60 minutes in length, is going to be absolutely fantastic. We got those 3 classes to keep in mind as well. So, Lorenzo, I think we're in for a good one.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think this is going to be a tactical race now of sorts, because now what was a mad dash from start to finish, it becomes a little bit of a mental battle, a high speed. What was your description about this racetrack of sorts, Ron? What you said earlier about in the broadcast?
In reference to me calling it a game of leapfrog, was that it?
I think it was a 150-mile leapfrog, right? Battle of sorts.
Yeah, 150-mile-an-hour game of leapfrog.
Yeah, so I think we're gonna have that, but I think not only that, because we're on one of the tracks that has the highest fuels burn in the championship, it becomes now a fuel battle as well. With the battle for you to maybe get a lap extra on the pit stop, that overcut battle of sorts. So it's gonna be interesting getting this 1 hour race for everybody. And I would say this is gonna be key for the Pro-Am drivers who are looking for good results leading up to Road Atlanta, like I said before, when we have our endurance round.
Yeah, that Road Atlanta endurance race is going to be incredible. And just looking through the remainder of this season calendar, we've got Road Atlanta, Watkins Glen, Imola, Spa, and the Red Bull Ring to bring this season to a close. That race at Road Atlanta coming up in 1 week's time. Going to be the final endurance race of this season. And hopefully all of you will be able to tune into that broadcast in 1 week's time here on RaceSpotTV. Gives you a good reason to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on any of the racing action, which is certainly going to be good in this second race of the evening. We've got an AM driver in the form of Aiden Carter starting this race from the pole position. He's now on a 5-race win streak, looking to have his 6th win in a row. He's the driver with the most amount of wins in a row thus far this season, and has a very good shot to try and grab another, which I think he has a very realistic shot of doing. There's no question about it. But we'll get that starting grid loaded up for you in a couple of moments time, and brace for what's going to be 60 minutes of heart-pumping racing action set to begin in a couple of moments time. Aiden Carter will start from the pole position in that number 43 Corvette. Jack Sedgwick, who started the first race of the evening, that 30-minute long race we had a couple of moments ago in last, made his way up to P19 by the end of it, going to start this reverse grid in second. Jack Osborne going to be the highest starting Pro-Am driver, starting in third next to Adam State in fourth. Alessandro Torchio will start in fifth next to Lewis Ward in the number 22 machine in sixth. Looking at your fourth row, it's comprised of Aiden Young and Jonathan Walker, Joe Newman, and Arthur Thurtle set to round at your top 10. Michael Avdolka will start in P11. Adam Watson will start alongside in P12. He was a winner in the Pro-Am category in that first race, probably going to keep that same momentum into the second. Lorenzo Castellani will start in lucky number P13 next to his teammate of Alex Cohen, and starting right behind those two is their other teammate of Alessio Benino. They're trying to grab that Pro Team Championship lead, and I think they have a good shot to do it if they can just hang on. Daniel Ola in the number 99 machine will start this race in 16th. James Boumet in 17th. Ethan Critchley will start in P18, and looking through the drivers throughout the rest of the field, we've got Alexander Davidson and Dino Lombardi. I think they're already on the formation lap, so we may have to burn through these a little bit quickly. We have Kevin Simpson, Josh Booth in 21st and 22nd, Will Guthrie and Paul Webster in 23rd and 24th, Dan McCauley, Jesse Payne Wilkins, Phil Samways, Marley Joff, Ben Altria, and Benjamin Gregory rounding out your top 30. Andy Scheel will start in 31st, Luca Monroe in 32nd, Adam Hedgecock in 34th, Anders Meyer actually in 34th, Hedgecock in 33rd, Chris Chatterton in 35th, Simon Andre Livingston in 36th. We got barely any time to go through this. Alistair Pollock, Drew Fletcher in 37th and 38th, Cameron DeBastos in 39th, David Mendoka rounding out your top 40, Taylor Lane, Tom Stanley in 41st and 42nd, and rounding out your field we got David Baker, Stephen Karnick, Richard Simnor, Jan Van Pruis, Eric Roseth, and Michael Gray. 38 drivers, and we were able to get through all of them as they're heading their way through the Parabolica. I'm not sure if I could replicate that in a million years, but we were able to get through all of those starters just in the nick of time to get this 60-minute long race underway. We got an AM driver starting from the pole. We've only had one non-pro driver win a race, and it was actually when we had the full reverse in the second race of the season at the Nürburgring. But here for the second race in Monza, the green flag is out, and the drivers are on their way. Aiden Carter getting off to a flyer. He's going to try and lead him off into turn number one, but there's a big crash in the midfield. Multiple cars spun around, hitting the barrier. I think James Boumet involved in all that action as well. I think Daniel Ola got a piece of that action as well. More drivers going off, while the Mustangs taking to the runoff area, heading down into turn number one. Usually think in a GT3 race at Monza that turn 1 and 2 is going to be the trouble spots, but also run up in there. That was actually the trouble spot for these drivers.
Yeah, absolutely. Usually when you have those incidents at the runoff going to the rectification chicane, it usually brings out, like when it rains, it pours, and basically it poured heavily into the track. It was kind of like rain of chaos. We had rain at Hockenheim, but it was natural rain. Now we had rain of chaos into Monza, and again more chaos going to Lesbos.
As you just saw, front bumper fly off one of these race cars heading down into the Lesmos. I'm not sure who that came from, but it was a front bumper, and it's probably going to end up for sale on eBay come time for the end of this race. But as the field heads their way down into the Ascari chicane for the first time, Alexander Davidson in that number one machine, and contact being made right behind him. That's one of his teammates, I believe, spinning off a Porsche to be sure. That right there, unless I am very much mistaken, looking through the dust, trying to pick a number off that car. That may be Critchley. Yeah, I think you are correct there, Lorenzo. Going off the track, he was brilliant in the opening race of the evening, and clearly things going south for him into Ascari.
Yeah, man. One thing I can tell you from history, inverted grid racing always provides us some good old drama.
Yeah, good old drama indeed. That I think is the best way we could describe this. We were expecting a bit of chaos in the start of the 30-minute long race earlier on, but here in the 60-minute long race, clearly that's been the case in the 60, not the case in the 30. So these drivers playing a little bit of a subversion of expectations game thus far this evening. So in this race, we've still got plenty of time left to go. The dust getting kicked up in the air. One thing to raise about all these off-track encounters is that we may see some of these corners just be absolutely caked in gravel and grass on the exit of some of them. Let's just see how the rest of this race is going to play out. I think the drivers towards the front of the field have calmed down somewhat. Jack Sedgwick finds himself in the race leader from Aiden Carter in second. Still the top running AM driver in the process. Jack Osborne currently running in fourth. He is your top running Pro-Am driver, with Adam Slate currently completing your overall podium as it stands at the present moment. But despite the fact we saw some chaos at the start, these drivers clearly deciding not to give anything out there on the track.
Yeah, and it's natural. Race drivers are going to drive hard no matter what they're going to be doing, whether it's going to be lap one or the final lap. Now, one thing is going to be interesting, I think, for us to talk about in the remainder of this race is Jack Sedgwick's lead at the current moment, right? Jack, former world iRacing World Championship GT driver, highly experienced. Of course, some would argue not as competitive anymore, as Joke's going to be on the inside coming into the final corner. But he's a driver that you cannot sleep on. If you give him the opportunity to win a race, Jack Sedgwick or Jack Flip is going to try to take it.
Let's see the amount of opportunities that these drivers are going to have. And also, let's take a look at this drama at the very start. Oh, you can see the 07 cars in the midst of all of that. One of the 07 cars, not entirely sure who it was, spun James Boumet off right at the very beginning of this race. And you can see the drivers piling in, really nowhere to go in that run up to that first corner. Yeah, I mean, it's an old school track, Monza, so you don't have miles of runoff air on either side, even down the straightaway, heading off into one of the fastest, one of the heaviest braking zones in the entirety of the Formula One calendar. I'm going to have to do a little bit of investigative journalism to figure out who it was that spun James Boumet off, but either way, multiple cars involved in that. I can't even say lap 1, turn 1 drama. It's lap 1, pre-turn 1 drama.
It's a lap 1 drama. Pretty much, right? Yeah, but from what it looked like, from my perspective, I could be very wrong. I think there was WSR Porsche that did the bumping of the 07 car into Bome. So really, when I looked at on the replay, it seemed that I was actually wrong on that on my POV looking from the aerial cam. So we're gonna see what happens. Critchley, some air contact with one of the 07 guys.
Looking at another angle of that time with the RaceSpot helicopter. Multiple drivers avoiding near disaster heading off to that section. Here's Josh Boot, bang, into the outside wall, heading down into Parabolica. There may have been some sort of hardware failure for him because that was pretty far off. Cameron DeBastos spinning as well, and I think Ethan Critchley may have had a moment of his own. Lots of drivers overshooting their braking zone, heading down into Parabolica. A little odd to see all of that, and here's some mad weaving involving Aiden Young trying to get moved on, and Joe Newman heading down that start finish straightaway off into turn number 1. Young gets that move done to slip his way up to P8.
Yeah, and you can see he's going to try to break away the best way he can against Joe Newman. You see some blinking of the headlights from Newman, not appreciative of the fact that Aiden got a little bit aggressive, and now he's going to try to look for the inside that Mustang on Young. And some contact. Are they going to remain side by side coming into the corner? And they will remain side by side through the chicane. That's sketchy, and that's exactly what you usually expect with side by side racing coming out there. That's going to be a prime opportunity for Adam Watson to get a move done. Big contact a little bit farther in the back. Mega sideways is Joe Newman. Something is amiss in that Mustang. You can see him sideways, slideways, heading his way off even before turning into the corner, and he spins again. Coming out of Lesmo too, something is desperately wrong with that Mustang. I create a huge stack up of cars running right behind. Very lucky that everyone got away with that incident somewhat scot-free. Certainly with a bit of damage, Joe Newman really being the only one hurt by that majorly. Now finds himself all the way back down in P18. Jesus, that's it. He got like shunted by one of the WSR cars coming into Lasmo. Nearly made contact with Dino Lombardi, and one of the 07 guys made contact with him on Lasmo too. So everything just decided to go wrong once he went side by side into Del Raja against Aiden Young, and unfortunate to see that, but I know the stewards are going to be busy looking into what happened in those sequence of 3 corners. Yeah, it was a bizarre series of events. Drivers shoving each other off the racetrack, hitting the wall, hitting each other. Looked like it had a broken toe link. That or it was maybe just the gravel stuck on the tires of that race car, creating a rather terrible experience for him in the handling department as we take a look back at the front of the field and find Adam State currently running in second in front of Aiden Carter in third. Jack Osborne still your leader in the Pro-Am category. And I want to just tie a bow around the other storyline, talking about that lap 1 collision. It was multiple cars touching James Boumet. It was Lorenzo Castellani and Alexander Davidson that got a piece of that action with James Boumet, and then Boumet shooting across the track ended up side slamming Alex Cohen in the midst of all of that. So unfortunate for all of those drivers. Some close quarters action right at the very start of this race, but those rolling starts as well. The drivers always a little bit, they're itching to try and get some moves done rather early on, and since that's the case, you tend to have stuff like that happen. Yeah, and I've seen some comments about like normal lap 1. No, it is normal lap 1. Of course, you really want to try to be aggressive out of the gate, especially with some drivers, being a little bit slower than usual. Right on the start, getting a very solid start is really important for everybody. But trying to move up with a sense of urgency, you have pit stops. You can basically do that as the race goes on. Analyze, calm down and analyze the situation, and then you can move forward. Of course, you don't want to lose toe to the competition, but unfortunately on that sense, you cannot allow to get yourself sloppy on that sense. And am I correct? Is Dino Lombardi with some damage on the front end of his Acura with the contact he had on Newman? Oh. That's a lap one incident from Daniels.
Yeah, Ola Daniels' perspective in the midst of all of that. The 99 machine getting a big piece of that action. You can see even in the darkness that wheel cranked over about 45 degrees over to the right. So clearly something went desperately wrong in the suspension of that race car. Here's Paul Webster's perspective in all this in the 888. Does he gun it through here? Does he avoid all the drama? Survey says... Oh, it was a claw. No, he was so close to getting out of all that, but a rear checkup going to cause him to spin around. So close, yet so far away.
Yeah, man. Unfortunately, Webster tried his best, but he ran out of webs to get out of the situation.
But that's all I can say about all of that.
I'm bringing my Chaz Draycott and my Peter Mackay in myself today.
I'm trying to think of some old stories of what I used to do to get laughs in my early days of broadcasting. I used to blow on a harmonica, which I don't think is going to be something that carries over here to RaceSpotTV. Nothing would blow an audience quicker as these drivers looking to get some moves done on each other, heading down into the Ascari chicane. That's Arthur Thirdle in the Altitude Esports by SimStickers number 70 machine, trying to get a move done on Aiden Young. This is for class position and overall position as well. It is for 9th on the road as it stands currently. And let's see down the inside, heading off into Parabolica. Will it be a successful move from Thirdle, or will Aiden Young be able to hold off on that spot on the outside line, keeping that momentum rolling? The Acura and the McLaren still side by side on corner exits. This is not going to help them out at all. It's going to help out Alexander Davidson in the one machine right behind. He's going to be on the up and up, trying to make up as many spots as he possibly can in the very early stages of this race. Going to have to figure out exactly where Dino Lombardi finds himself in the early stages of this race as they peak out 2x2, heading down into turn number 1. Arthur Thirdle and Aiden Young coming to blows, coming at turn number 2. That's going to allow Lorenzo Castellani to slip by the both of them.
Yeah, and that's not the first incident we saw with Aiden Young, and Aiden already probably in the eyes of the stewards for what happened to Joe Newman prior on Del Raja a few laps back. It allowed basically one of the WSR cars in 07 to move forward, which is Castellani and Davidson. Just, they caught him sleeping after that incident, and they're going to say thank you very much.
I will also say, I mentioned a couple of moments ago trying to figure out where Dino Lombardi is. I wasn't really believing my eyes, but my eyes are actually correct for the first time in 20 years. Dino Lombardi has gotten himself involved in this battle. He finds himself in the midst of that right behind Aiden Young, heading down into the Ascari chicane right about now. So making his way up the running order, finds himself in lucky number P13. Lombardi, as I mentioned, right towards the top of this second part of the show, Lombardi has been struck by a lot of falling anvils, and he may have just caught one there coming out of the final chicane. Those drivers scattering around. I think that was Lombardi who got mega loose coming out of the chicane. I think I'll keep my mouth shut about it because he had a wild off-track excursion, went through the grass, and now dropping his way down the running order. That was sketchy for Lombardi.
Yeah, absolutely. But I wonder if that was assisted, because from the way it looked, we're going to look on the replay. Right-hand side, car looks planted. Oh, mega bump. Yeah, mega bump on the curb.
And let's take a look at this from the outside perspective. Lombardi catching some air, hit that anti-cut curb on the inside. Here, a lot of people call them baguette curbs, sausage curbs, anti-cut curbs. I usually like to call them the overcooked sausage curbs because much like an overcooked sausage, you tend to chip your teeth on them. So that's what happened. Lombardi hit that curb, popped himself up onto only one wheel. Have it be known in a GT3 race car that only running on the right rear, not going to be a good strategy for you. So unfortunately for Lombardi, hit that curb, and it's going to spear him off the road of side-by-side racing, involving Aiden Young and Alex Cohen. Those two drivers battling for P12 at this present moment. This is a massive pack of race cars we got on screen right now.
Yeah, what do you have there? Young, Thirdle, Cohen, Bonino, Evdoka without a bumper. And then you have Lombardi and all the way back with so many other cars involved in the mix as well.
And and one good thing to race is that these drivers do have a fast repair at their disposal, but gotta try and use that sparingly because anything can happen between now and the checkered flag. Is look at that, deep on the brakes as Alex Cohen hang his way down into Ascari, and he gets that move done to slip his way up into 12th. In the midst of all that drama, Arthur Thurtle in the number 70 machine has completely checked out, finds himself in P11 at the present moment, and he is well farther up the road. You can just barely see him in that camera shot heading down into Parabolica as more drivers trying to get some moves done on each other, heading down into the final corner. Parabolica going to be a real good overtaking opportunity for these drivers all throughout the race. Alessio Bonino on the outside in that number 33 machine, trying to get a move done and trying as best as he can to hold off any sort of challenge. He's currently side by side, heading down, well, was side by side with himself and I believe it's Michael Ndoka in the midst of all of that drama as well, but they're still vacuum sealed together. It's like a bunch of sardines packed into a can, hang their way down the first chicane.
Yeah, as Young kind of like blocks a little bit of the movement on the exit of the chicane right there, allows everybody to get a little bit cozy and closer. But Evdoka trying to do his best AO Racing impression at Daytona without that bumper, but somehow, someway, that car looks fast on the straight line.
Hey, it's weight reduction. That's exactly what it is. Losing a little bit of weight, that's... I mean, it's one thing to raise about those Porsches. Those front bumpers are actually made out of tungsten.
You want to call it basically, instead of DRS, you're going to call it that detachable, front wing, or something like that for you to gain that extra speed. 10 kilometers plus per hour if you remove the front bumper.
Yeah, I guess that would be DFB, detachable front bumper, detachable front splitter, maybe.
Yeah.
Someone just had a wild off-track moment heading down into the Ascari chicane. You could see the tire marks heading through there. Not entirely sure who that was. That may have been, unless I'm very much mistaken, potentially Arthur Thurtle. I'm going to take a look to try and figure out who exactly that was. Heading down as some side-by-side racing going to flare up, heading down into the corner. That's Arthur Thurtle that did go off the track. So I was thinking that he maybe got away with that rather scot-free, but my initial intuition actually proved me right there for the first time in 20 years, as he was the one that had that rally special stage line heading off through Ascari as these drivers running each other by the wall, chasing that draft as best as they possibly can, heading into turn number 1 side by side. Who's going to win out in this battle list? Late breakers heading through. Aiden Young looking to pick up some moves in that number 427 machine as contact being made between the two of them.
And we're getting close to a very teary situation for everybody, as now the Lombardi getting himself blocked by a Corvette and an Acura right in front of him. The Corvette on the inside, that's Job going into De La Raja side by side. 2 cars abreast. That never works. Somehow they made it stick.
Yeah, that could have ended an absolute disaster there for Dino Lombardi. It didn't, but it was very much close to. Side-by-side racing continuing, heading all through Lesmo 1. That nearly ended in tears for Aiden Carter. These drivers banging doors, banging wheels, banging just about everything that they can. They're breaking their elbows out. Someone saying in the YouTube chat that these drivers are treating this lengthy race, the feature race, out of all of this in this technical round, the 60-minute long race, treating it more like they should have treated that 30-minute long race. They're breaking the elbows as if every single lap is their last.
So, pretty much, yeah. Oh, car getting twitchy from Bonino is going to lose 1 position. Yeah, there you go. He's going to lose to Guthrie, and Newman moved the side as well. Apparently some issues at the back, but you can see the amount of cars side by side coming into Parabolica is just something that is actually insane.
Oh, it is absolutely wild. I mean, just taking a look at this pack, look at the amount of cars that we have covered by practically nothing. It's led by Aiden Young, who is actually breaking away from this pack a little bit. We'll still count him in the midst of all that. Dino Lombardi, he's trying to do well in this race. As I mentioned, right towards the top end of the second half of the show, usually doesn't do well in these reverse grid situations. Was oh so fast in that first race, won it by, what was it, 3.25 seconds between himself and Alexander Davidson at the end of that race. Still finds himself in P17 in the midst of a hornet's nest of race cars. As much as you may have the pace at the front of the field, once you throw dirty air, side-by-side racing and drivers drivers battling tooth and nail, like in the case of Joe Newman being and banging doors with a Corvette that he's around the outside of at the present moment. It just creates a completely different dynamic for Lombardi to try and tackle.
Yeah, absolutely. It just adds a little bit more complication for him to try to tackle and see where it gets around. But the good news for him is the fact that Davidson is not far away from him. He's in 10th place, right? And Lombardi, despite being 17th, the point range is not that great between them. Yes, or pit stops. So I was going to say begin, but stay having a massive issue around the exit of Ascari.
And that's a big off-track moment for him. That's an unusual spot to spin off, and I gotta wonder, based off the positioning of that car, he probably lost it hang through the second part of the Ascari chicane, probably on the curb. And let's see, survey says, yes, he did. So my intuition actually serving me correctly, a tap of the wall as well. But Adam stayed losing out on a boatload of time in that number 16 machine. Those anti-cut curbs around this track coming back to bite these drivers on the butt in a bad way.
Yeah, absolutely. Monza is a very tough track if your car suspension cannot handle the bumps quite well, and there's a certain amount of load that you can get around the bumps at Monza. So unsurprisingly, Stay would be thrown around like a rag doll, but fortunately avoided the wall barrier, the tire wall barrier out there, and still remains on the track. The problem is he went from P2 all the way down to P13.
Yeah, that's going to be a kick in the shins if ever you see one. And one thing to raise about an off-track excursion here on iRacing, there may be an update. Fingers crossed there will be an update well farther down the line once they can work out like soft crash physics with the tire barriers. Those tire barriers, as it stands currently, they're basically made out of the matter of white dwarf stars. So when you hit them, it's basically like slamming straight into a brick wall. These drivers looking to avoid that at all costs if they possibly can. These cars could be made out of tungsten in the case of the front bumper of the Porsches, as I joked about a couple of laps ago. But even then, running with a concrete barrier, regardless of what kind of car you're in, that's usually not going to end terribly well. We'll also say this race has been a bit more attrition-packed. 44 cars still out there on the track. Daniel Alistair Pollack and some other drivers already out of it as it stands currently, but still got a massive pack of race cars running this race and just battling tooth and nail up and down the grid.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the insane portion. We haven't even got to pit stops yet. We're thinking about pit stops. We don't know how the fuel range is up for everybody who has an advantage coming into the pit stop. We can overcut one lap, overcut 2 laps. It's just been insane. Like you said before, they're treating this like a 30-minute race. It doesn't feel like it's a 30-minute race. It feels like a 10-minute race of sorts. It's like a yellow flag and fight all the way to the finish, NASCAR style. Like you said at Martinsville, I don't know who would be the Ross Chastain of all the situation right here though. I'm trying to figure out how someone could do a Ross Chastain. Probably just gun it over the curbs, potentially somehow glitch out iRacing so they don't pick up a slowdown and end up being like 15 seconds quicker on the final lap of this race. If someone did that, I had to break out my best Rick Allen impression. Take a look at what he did. That was terrible. I apologize. Take a look at the front of the field. We've got a very odd situation currently. Jack Sedgwick in the number 11 machine, the pro driver leading it. Got the Pro-Am of Jack Osborne right behind, and the Am driver of Aiden Carter running out your podium spots as it stands currently. Lewis Ward running in 22nd. Now, Lewis Ward, he's been a driver that we've kept tabs on all throughout this season, but he hasn't really been able to get the results that he maybe had in mind. But the number 22 machine currently finds himself in P4, and fingers crossed I didn't just strike him with one of the worst commentators' jinxes of my broadcasting career. Did you call a yellow flag out of the blue though? Have you ever had that pleasure of calling out a yellow flag? Unintentionally, even though you mentioned the yellow flag.
Well, I will say, usually our friend and colleague here on the World GT Championship and here on RaceSpotTV, Mr. Paul Smith, is usually in charge of throwing yellow flags in the case of some sort of track blockage. That responsibility has been passed on to me, but we haven't really seen a track blockage. We've certainly got close to it, mind you, but we haven't gone there quite yet, as we just saw a driver peel out of this battle and go down pit lane. Alex Cohen and Arthur Thurl side by side hang down into turn number 1. Cohen going to get that move done to slip his way up into 9th. It's looking like a pretty alright drive from the front 2 in the 07 camp, as Lorenzo Castellani and Alex Cohen currently running in P8 and P9, albeit that's 6 seconds a gap between those two drivers, considering the shenanigans, for lack of a better term, that we saw with those drivers battling just barely inside and just barely outside the top 10, with Dino Lombardi making the call to pit. So the race winner in race 1 now coming into the pits in the number 78 machine. He's out and away. Let's see where he exits at.
Yeah, because it's going to be important that exit for Dino Lombardi. You can see, I think there was a young gold, there's some cut. I think that's similar to one of the percent that Nomad guys that are fighting around the corner. That looks to be Chris Chatterton right in front of him. So got a little bit of the bumpy coming into Dalaraja, and now the pit stop started. The one thing they're going to be thinking about, is kind of like potential undercut, because everybody's been battling so much the others, and there's still that potential, mistake or contact between other drivers that might be within the same group that could open the door for them to, maybe overtake some cars or get some freebies. So looking forward to see how the situation is going to unfold. But for Lombardi, it's important that he clears out one of that WSR cars and Nathan Young as fast as he can.
Now, when it comes to how this race is going to unfold, there's a lot of questions surrounding it. Is it going to... This is going to be a cheesy line, so I apologize in advance. Is it going to unfold with the simplicity of a paper snowflake, or is it going to unfold with the complexity of an origami swan? Let's just wait and see how this race is going to go. Take a look at the drivers running all throughout this field, and nearly going 3 wide coming out of Parabolica. These drivers will continue to fight in just about any single point of the racetrack that you can find the opportunity to go side by side in, but these pit stops are definitely here. It started off as a slow trickle of drivers coming down pit lane, but it has turned on to a full-on flood, and side by side racing and banging wheels and doors, heading down into turn at number 1. That is some real close quarter stuff. These drivers, one in a Porsche, another in a Mustang, giving us a brilliant battle to talk about a couple of moments ago, and they're still going to be racing hard. Having to navigate the amount of drivers that are on pit lane at the present moment is rather insane. But it was bound to happen at some point. Now the pit stops are well and truly here.
Absolutely, and we're gonna get these small pockets of battle as similar cars got loose on the first leg of the Dalaraja chicane, and Chatterton, I think he can breathe for a few split seconds. There's another car, I think that was 100% a Nomads, that decided to cut, I think, all the 2 parts of the chicane nearly entirely, especially the second half. So it's that thing of trying to find yourself within the best spot available without last traffic as possible, doing a good lap to set yourself with a really strong in lap, and then potentially retain your position when you come out of the pit lane.
Yeah, and it's super important to try and maintain that same spot once you do have that pit cycle, which is a heck of a lot easier said than done. We've seen many of these races and many of the running orders throughout these races get completely turned on their head as a result of a run through the pits, and I have a feeling that this race here at Monza is going to be absolutely no different. Side by side racing down into turn number 1, Jonathan Walker in the 88 machine running wide, hitting the curb. That's got to check these drivers up quite bad. Lorenzo Castellani in the midst of all of that as well. Alessandro Torchio and the 912 machine getting involved in that action as well. Adam Watson also looking to have a piece of that drama as well. Got 3 Pro-Ams and 1 Pro driver really dicing it out for that final spot inside the top 5. Side by side between Watson and Torchio off through the second chicane. Looks like Watson in that 291 machine going to get that move done. This is a well-composed drive from Adam Watson. If he can show the same pace and maybe have a very good run through the pits, he may find himself in a good spot to take the second Pro-Am win of the day and the second in a row in the process. But Watson, even if he holds on to the spot at the moment in class, he'd be the currently the third placed Pro-Am driver running a P7 overall. This is a rather well-composed drive from Watson. I'm liking this from him.
It's a safe drive for Watson. Very good, very mature drive, if you want to call it that, as well, from him in the stage of the championship. You know, you kind of have to have that. As we see Jack Osborne, I think he had a little bit of a squirrely moment as go 3 wide into Parabolica. Back to you, and maybe Jack Osborne maybe setting himself into the pit stop, being the last car in the train and such.
As we continue to see these drivers battling tooth and nail up and down the running order, we jump back up to the front of the field and find these drivers battling for the final 2 podium spots. Lewis Ward holding off to second, Aiden Carter giving him the bump drift down that start-finish straightaway, finds himself in third, top running of the AM drivers in the process. Jack Osborne in the number 91 machine, my apologies, finds himself rounding out this 3-car pack that we have on screen at the present moment. One great thing I always like to race when it comes to GT3 broadcast is talking about the diversity in these cars. You got a Porsche, a Corvette, and a Mustang in this pack that we've got on screen right now. Always good to see the pros and the cons, the yin and the yang, and all the different quirks and features of these race cars.
Yeah, absolutely. So trying to get a little bit technical as quickly as I can over here. Porsche, great all-round grip. It basically can corner. If you want the car to basically be pointy, get some mid-corner grip, some good acceleration out of it, the Porsche is your car to go, especially on tracks that are more twisty. The Porsche also has a little bit of a better tire wear than the other cars. Corvette, very fast on straights, especially if you run at the low downforce setting, which is going to be the key over here at Monza. Has some understeer on corners, maybe some oversteer coming into the corners and maybe getting back on reacceleration, but it's a good car, solid car choice. And the Mustang, seen its bump and bruises, but has some top speed. And what was your analogy to cornering on the Mustang that you said earlier?
Yeah, when the Mustang was first added into iRacing, the handling properties were very similar to a trash bag full of 1,000 pounds of lasagna. That may be the first time anyone has ever said that in the history of this series, in the history of RaceSpotTV. Is Aiden Carter in that Corvette going to make that call to come into the pits, saving me from having to explain what that quote means. Finds himself in P8 as a result of this run through the pits, only going to drop down even more. But this is an important series of stops for Carter. One in that AM category in the opening race of the evening, looking to go for a 6th win in a row in that AM class. And if anyone's going to do it, it's probably going to be Carter. He is fast, and as of late, he's been pretty much close to unstoppable.
Yeah, but and also more importantly, I would look for a podium spot. I think not only you get the win, but I think there's a real chance for him to get a podium spot. He just needs to get the pit stop right and maybe get the outlap going, get some momentum in the tires as well, because you're going to be basically with the half of can left in the car, basically full can, depending on how much those cars can actually take, about 50, if it is 50% of the car fuel tank. So if it is up and down level, I think he's going to be set for towards the end of the race, even if they get an extra lap. The one other thing that is kind of caught my eyes a little bit is the gap between Osborne and Walker and Watson respectively came down due to the battling. So I don't think Osborne's in a comfortable position to say that he has the win in the Pro-Am class for now. So we got to look forward to the developments of the next few laps.
Yeah, these next few laps are going to be super important in the context of the entirety of this race, as we still have those pit stops going on and are probably going to see some of the drivers up the north end of the field make that call to pit in the not too far off future. Jack Cedric going to stay out for yet another lap in the race lead. Lewis Ward going to do the same along with Jack I spoke too soon. Lewis Ward making the run into the pits in the number 22 machine. He's now dropping down a running order, having to come into the pits, which is a mandatory thing for these drivers. More drivers making that call to come into the pits in the form of Adam State in the number 18 machine. Lewis Ward playing me like a fiddle, stopped in his pit stall right now. Let's see how it shakes out for the 22.
Absolutely. Basically inherited P2 of sorts after Adam State's mistake, and basically driving around and driving incline like cleanly. After this, I still, in my point of view, on Jack and Osborne. Jack last lap was a 47.6 in comparison to, I'm trying to find Torchos, a 47.694, but I think that is yet to be updated unless I'm going crazy on my timing screen.
I think potentially we'll have to hold off on that and see how it works. But we are following Alessandro Torchio in the 912 machine. We'll note he's the fourth place runner of the Pro-Am drivers. That's one thing that always I like to keep tabs on. Obviously, the battle for the overall win, super intense in these races with the reverse grid. But the Pro-Am battle is usually incredibly intense as well. Adam Watson won the opening race of the evening in that Pro-Am class, found himself third of the Pro-Am drivers at the present moment. He's going to have to work a little bit of overtime in that 291 machine if he wants to get the moves done on Jonathan Walker a little bit farther up the road, and also catch up to Jack Osborne, who finds himself in P2 at the moment.
Absolutely. It's an interesting race so far, how this one's kind of like progressing as Osborne is going to come into the pit lane, losing a little bit of ground to Walker and Watson and Torchio. Is going to be the first one of the Pro-Ams to actually within the lead battle that is going to come into the pit stop, and it's basically going to put the pressure on Walker and all the other guys within that top four to see what they're going to do this lap potentially, if they're going to come in or not. Meanwhile, Jack Flip's gap kind of comfortable, sitting around 14-15 seconds.
Yeah, Jack Sedgwick in that number 11 machine really impressing, as Aiden Carter just got moved on Drew Fletcher. Those two drivers both running in the AM category briefly went side by side, and now they're single filed out, heading down the start finish straight away. More drivers making that call to come into the pits. Only 25 minutes left to go in this race. It's been rather hectic. First 35. Look at that, though. That's some sketchy stuff, heading down that start finish straight away with a Mustang coming out of the pits, and both those drivers deciding to go either side of him. We may need to load up a replay and see that from the perspective of the Mustang who's coming out of pit lane. That was risky for sure. I think there's no other way to describe it. Looking through, trying to figure out who that was in the Mustang. I believe that was Jack Osborne in the 91 machine. Yes, it was Jack Osborne in that 91 car. Holy, imagine being him, thinking, okay, yeah, gotta come out of the pits, cold tires, this is gonna be sketchy, and then you see two drivers in the AM category just split the difference and go either side of you.
Yeah, as you can see, the blink of the headlights, kind of like giving a moment for him, you know, trying to cue in my best Michael Jackson impression, even though I'm feeling miserably. Replay on screen. Hello there.
I'm not touching that one. Jack Osborne, though, his perspective and all that in the number 91 machine, that was, oh boy, as Jack Sedgwick has made the call to come into the pits from the race lead in the number 11 machine. He's being joined in the pits by Jonathan Walker and Adam Watson, so some of the two front runners in the Pro-Am class deciding that now is the time to pit. How's this going to work out for Jack Sedgwick? Still stopped in his pits, saw a little bit of that 20 seconds stopped in the pit box, and how's this going to work out? Gets overtaken by a few drivers in the form of actually gets overtaken by a decent chunk of drivers, trying to figure out where he is on my live timing screen at the present moment. You can tell my eyes failing me at the worst possible time. Finds himself in P7. There we go. I think I may need to get my glasses prescription changed.
It's all right. It's like it takes a while for us to see stuff, but he's still in the net lead of the race, though. That's the important thing between everybody, and Nathan Card is in second place from what it looks like.
And that's going to be pretty good points for Aiden Carter if he could just hang on to that spot. Finds himself in 10th at the moment, which, as you just said a couple of moments ago, Lorenzo, that will be net P2 if he could just hold on for dear life. Side-by-side racing, though, heading down into the second chicane. Nearly turned into three-wide action. That could have ended in tears. This is involving Adam Watson. This is a battle for position in the Pro-Am category and a battle for position overall. These drivers muscling past each other. Lewis Ward in the midst of all of that as well, and really close to having a disaster coming out of the second chicane, but they managed to avoid it, so well done to those drivers.
Really good battle between them, and Osborne still has a chance to maybe retain some good points in there and bring the battle to both these Porsches right in front. The problem is, I don't know how the fronts of that Mustang are looking like so far. Of course, you said cold tires. That could be a factor as well. But of course, grip-wise, the Porsche has much better grip. The question is there a way for Osborne to countervent that grip mechanical initial grip advantage that the Porsche have, of course, straight line speed wise, to get back into the position that he lost.
Yeah, a lot of questions left to be answered in terms of the dynamics of these race cars and the competition between them as more drivers have come into the pits in the form of Alessandro Torchio and also Alex Cohen. He's now out and away in P4. As it's going to work out for these drivers, Jack Sedgwick back into the race lead. They're not going to find themselves exiting the pits and rejoining this racetrack in the midst of a hornet's nest yet again. This is rather terrifying for these drivers. Adam Watts in the midst of all that drama, banging wheels and banging doors, heading his way off through the first chicane. That's himself and Alessandro Torchio. That's a battle for P2 at the moment in the Pro-Am category and P5 in this race overall. They're still side by side, heading their way off into the second chicane in a couple of moments' time. Who's going to win out in the battle of the last late breakers as the headlights start to come out around this racetrack as well? Watson going to slip his way up to 5th.
Yeah, a little bit feisty on the move right there, but it made it work. The question is, Ward can get around Torchio, and you see right behind Keon, from what it looks like to be Keon, getting around Jack Osborne. Osborne maybe able to defend around the outside. He's not going to be able to. Keon moving up one spot for that 0-17, even though Osborne says not yet.
Now, holding that off for now, these drivers continue to go side by side, heading down into turn number. I should have just said the Ascari chicane. I didn't have the turn number on deck there, but still, close quarter stuff heading down into the chicane. Many good overtaking opportunities around this racetrack, and the Ascari chicane, despite being one of the heaviest braking zones of the entirety of the lap, it's not usually going to work out well for these drivers. That's a tall order, getting a move done in there. And if you try and go for the move, you have to get done with authority in the process. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in a whole lot of trouble. But as it stands, currently continuing to see these drivers, this time coming out of Parabolica. I thought we were on a completely different racetrack at first. That was such a different camera angle compared to what I'm used to. These drivers continue to go side by side, battle tooth and nail, and run nose to tail. How many cars do we have in this one camera shot right now? It's probably well into the double digits. It's insane how close this field is, despite the fact that we're in the final 20-minute dash of the 60-minute long race.
Yeah, we can basically count, of course, 4 cars in the train, 5 potentially with Aiden Carter being the 5th car, leading up this pack of sorts of Jonathan Walker. It is within range, so it's insane how close the gaps from like 3rd to all the way back into 7th place are. You can even argue, to 9th place are. It basically one sneeze and you can lose a position. So it is just how insane it is. There's a mad dash at the end of the race with less than 20 minutes.
And I'm going to correct myself from one lap ago. It's turn 8, 9, and 10 heading down into the Ascari chicane. Had to pull up my track map graphic for that on my end. So it is into turn number 8, the braking zone into turn 8, not being one that Alex Cohen's going to try and go for the move on Lewis Ward. These 2 pro drivers currently battling. This would be for a 3rd of the pro drivers as it stands at the present moment, with Jack Sedgwick and Lorenzo Castellani running P1 and P2 in this race overall, and P1 and P2 in their class as a result. Lewis Ward and Cohen still going to give us a good battle to talk about right to the line. Jonathan Walker in the 88 machine is your current leader in Pro-Am, and Aiden Carter, your leader in the Am category. Marley Jove, who are following right now in the 918 machine, just got moved on to slip his way up into the top 10. That was himself and Arthur Thurtle battling off into Parabolica. Get to see more of this racing action. It's been a very exciting day of racing action up to this point. I gotta say, in all of it, we were probably expecting more of the drama to come in the 30-minute long race. This 60-minute long race, though, has probably seen a bit more attrition than these drivers probably had in mind. We talk about being in the right frame of mind for these drivers. Is there anything that they can do to kind of prepare for any sort of Monza-related shenanigans, doubly so with that big wreck we saw at the start?
Play Wreckfest 2.
Fair enough. or be meant to drive. That could be it as well.
My summer car, I'll play the best simulators for you to get that preparation.
And for people who picked the Mustang when it was first introduced into iRacing, they could get some experience driving around in Euro Truck Simulator too. I say this as the American on this broadcast. Love the Mustang, love the Corvette. I'm a bit of a GM guy myself. I mean, I'm being completely real. The Corvette can be a bit of a dog at times on iRacing as it stands currently. As we got three rather similar looking race cars, all three different cars though. Adam Hedgecock and the number 13 McLaren battling hard with Cameron DeVostas and Paul Webster. Webster picking up a slowdown, I believe, heading off to the chicane and going off the track as well into Lesbo. One and bang into the wall. That 888 full tilt motorsports car, full tilt, smacking the outside barrier. Drew Fletcher was about to get a move done on him, heading off into the corner. Not sure if there was contact or if he just speared off the track in dramatic fashion, but either way, a moment for Webster that's going to take him out of contention.
Yeah, if the start wasn't bad enough for Webster, this, I think, was the nail in the coffin, right, for him. As Carter and Walker managed to catch themselves in the racetrack, and Carter already losing P4 just in like one sequence of corners.
Yeah, it's a massive pack of race cars that Ian Carter finds himself in at the present moment. This is rather sketchy. Still finds himself in a spot to grab his sixth AM win in a row this season, but he's going to have to be walking on eggshells to be able to make it to the checkered flag in the first place. Lost out on 2 spots in the span of a couple of moments, one on Jonathan Walker, the other on Adam Watson, as we see the moment for Paul Webster, a sideways snap through Lesmo, one and bang into the outside wall. Not sure if there's contact there. Did not look like it from that replay, but either way, that's a heartbreaking mistake right towards the end of the 60-minute long race.
Oh yeah, you don't want to injure a race that abruptly like that. From what it looked like, there was some small contact that could have broken the wheel of Webster, but nevertheless, it's unfortunate to see that happen. We're gonna look on the replay. Yeah, there's definitely contact. As I don't know if he tried to turn in on the Series 1 car, or if there was an overlap for that Series 1 car inside Lesmo 1.
Yeah, I think it was just initially a sideways snap and then a contact, the hip check, sending him off the circuit. Either way, though, it's going to end the same way for Paul Webster in that 888 machine. Regardless of how it came to be, he's going to end up in that tire barrier and take him out of contention right towards the end of this race. I think he decides to tow back the pits as well and may entirely have just left the session, deciding to call it there. Yes, he has completely left the session. So Paul Webster, the Pro-Am driver, going to be out of it with only 14 minutes left to go on the clock. We're going to crunch time in this race, probably about, doing the quick math in my head, which it's math from me, so chances are it's probably going to be hilariously inaccurate. Probably about 7 or 8 laps left to go at the moment, so not a lot of time left for these drivers.
Ooh, I'll go at a little bit of a higher estimate, 9 laps, because they're doing 147. So we're just past the 14 minute mark. If we put up 14, you get 9 laps total, adding a few seconds in between here and there. But he could be right. I'm just like rounding out a little bit of a higher number, but we're working on the same parameters, man.
Yeah, I'm not going to break out the calculator for this because I feel like the comedy of having my math be hilariously inaccurate and just seeing my room fill up with smoke as my brain cooks itself trying to figure out mathematical equations, I think that's a little bit funnier than just breaking out a calculator. But continuing on with this race, still have drivers covered by practically nothing. This pack that we have on screen at the moment runs from Jonathan Walker in P3 overall all the way back, trying to see who's at the tail end of all this. I think the tail end car in the midst of it all is Jack Osborne in the number 91 machine. So this is involving the top 4 in the Pro-Am category, some of the top running drivers in Pro, and also your leader in Am. So a lot is still at stake with this battle of side by side. Heading down the start finish straight away between Alex Gowan and Aiden Carter. Alessio Torchio is going to be involved in all of that and looking to pick up the pieces if these drivers go off the track in a cloud of dust and steam. Looks like they get through there surprisingly clean. Aiden Carter, though, in that number 43 Corvette, muscling his way past.
Yeah, and somehow, some way, still lost a little bit of momentum coming out of the first chicane, and allowed Cohen to have a little bit of a better momentum coming outside the corner. You can see Torture trying to get a little bit aggressive on the braking, trying to find a little bit of a spot, but got blocked immediately by Carter coming into the corner, and they had to go into a single file, but that could have been a dangerous moment that could have ended the race for Carter. Eventually take that 4-5 win streak, potentially 5 win streak from him. 4-5 win streak?
For Aiden Carter, he's currently on a 5-race winning streak at the present moment. So looking to extend it to 6 in this race, and based off the fact that he's the only AM driver who finds themselves in the top 10, that's a pretty good shot to get done, but I won't say anything more on that subject at risk of jinxing him. Still running in P6, as that's a car going off the track in dramatic fashion. That was Aiden Carter, so I'm going to shut my mouth about that 6-race win streak, because as I started talking about it, he spears off the track coming out of Ascari, drops down to 9th. He avoided the barrier, though, which I think is the greatest achievement of all.
Yeah, I think at this moment, take the L, stay within the toe, and relinquish the win that you have so far as Cohen moves inside Adam Watson.
Yeah, and that's another driver hitting those curbs on the inside of turn number 10, the final parts of that Ascari section. Not the first driver who's been caught out by it, certainly will not be the last either, but as the smoke and the dust gets kicked up in the air from the back of Jonathan Walker's car, he's looking to hold off the challenge from Alex Cohen, because what this is, it's not only a battle for the final overall podium spot, it's a battle of security for Jonathan Walker. Right behind Cohen, you find Adam Watson looking to grab his 2nd win in the Pro-Am category of the night, but Cohen going to get that move done on him, heading off into the 2nd chicane. That small little cushion that Jonathan Walker found himself holding on to as preciously as he could, that's now gone. The next driver behind him is going to be Adam Watson, and the one behind Watson is going to be Alessandro Torchio. So if Jonathan Walker has a trip up, he may find himself dropping out of the podium in Pro-Am. That'll be a heartbreaking swing of events for the 88.
Yeah, and that would be atrociously bad for Walker. That's the one thing you really don't want to have. You can even see the biggest movers and the ups and downs on the racetrack. Castellani 11 positions with Cohen as well. Joe 19 positions for him. But I think the biggest mover might be Eric Rothset with 34 positions gained inside the top 15. But for me, what is going to be interesting is how this Pro-Am battle is going to unfold, because Osborne is within this train as well. So you can still have, say, Osborne within that podium spot if any of these guys waffle and make a massive blunder and potentially throw away a podium spot.
I will also note, talking about some of the drivers in this race, Dino Lombardi finds himself in 12th, as look at that, sliding all around the racetrack, swapping sides down that start-finish straightaway off into turn number 1. That's Adam Watson and Alessandro Torchio going side by side coming out of that first chicane. Looks like they're going to officially single file out, but in all of that, going to lose a little bit of time to Jonathan Walker. It's music to the ears of the driver of the number 88 car, but certainly not music to the ears of Watson and Torchio. They're making this race a little bit harder for themselves as it stands currently. Still nearly side by side, a bit of overlap into the braking zone for the final chicane. More dust getting kicked up in the air. If we've been in crunch time for the past 15 minutes, we're certainly in crunch time now. Now 8 minutes left to go on the clock. These racers getting to the point where they're going to break the elbows out. They're taking the gloves off as well, and they are going to be throwing some haymakers towards their competitors to make up any spots that they can. In a series this close, making up 1 or 2 spots at the end of it all is going to make a huge difference in reference to the respective class championship fights, as side by side between Lewis Ward and Marley Joff heading down into Ascari. They single fly out with Joff getting the move done.
So it's going to be quite interesting. If you said there was a crunch mentality right now with 20 minutes ago, this is like Warzone final, the final circle mentality. Everybody's just going to have to, bunch up, trying to find the best spots, aim down the sides, and try to find the best place for you to, you know, figuratively saying, kill the opposition and get ahead, you know. So it's going to be interesting how this race is going to develop, especially for Torchio, Watson, and Walker. Meanwhile, important points for 07 Racing because the WSR Esports butt kicker not having a good performance so far. Oh, Torchio, massive block.
Oh, look at that. Those drivers swapping sides, heading down into turn number 1. It was definitely an aggressive block for sure for Alessandro Torchio in that 912 machine, but he holds off the challenge from Marley Joff for now. Those two drivers battling for 6th and 7th out there on the road currently. Torchio holding on to the final podium spot in Pro-Am, and Jonathan Walker actually extending that gap quite a lot between himself and Adam Watson, on track to try and grab that win in class. Aiden Carter still running in P10. He is your leader at the moment in AM. Adam Sedgwick has extended that gap between himself and Lorenzo Castellani to 16.2 seconds. And raising the point that you brought up a couple of moments ago, Lorenzo, talking about a fellow Lorenzo and his team, the 07 Racing entrants, currently a P2 and P3 for them at the moment, with Lorenzo Castellani in the 5 and Alex Cohen in the 95. That's going to be a rather good points haul for them if they can just hold on to those spots in the final 5 minutes and change.
Absolutely, considering the fact that if you grab the WSR Esports butt kicker team, if it is Davidson and Critchley respectively. Critchley had the issue early on in the race. He probably had to repair his bumper, but Davidson and State are respectively in P15 and P14. So they're not far back, but the point gap for them is gonna be quite huge for them to conquer. So that will be a massive loss for them. I think they're still going to retain the lead in the championship, considering how they did race 1, but looking to see how that is going to translate to Rodet Plana. Back to you.
And that's a very good point to raise. Talking about the points as side by side, 3 wide nearly coming at turn number 1. Holy cow, that's Torchio, Watson, and Jolf battling tooth and nail, breaking the elbows out and hitting each other in the forehead. Oh, that's a big off-track moment for Adam Watson. That's heading through turn number 3. I think he avoided the barrier and all of that. There's no way that he avoided the barrier. How quick that car speared off the track. The gravel must have been like quicksand for that Porsche, because I didn't even see a paint chip taken out of that race car. Maybe to load up a replay to see what happened to that 291 machine. That may have been, I mean, that could make a huge difference in reference to that Pro-Am championship battle, because Adam Watson, despite the fact he has a lot of wins thus far this season, doesn't really have that gap that you'd usually expect. He's been a little bit inconsistent at certain points of time, if we are being brutally honest, and seeing a moment like that for him coming out of the first chicane, and let's ride on board with him and his perspective in this terrifying ride off the track. I think he got spun, got a clip in the left rear. He brushed the barrier, but that could have been a heck of a lot worse.
That could have been race-ending incident for him. I don't know if he actually has issues with the car, because, well, he dropped about 7 spots. He's in P12. So he dropped outside of the top 10, but he didn't drop outside of the top 5, which is for him is important. That's the thing. One thing that he got to keep in mind of is only 3 laps to go, give or take. So keep your car within the track and get those important points for you in the championship, and just let them fight, because there's still potential for him to get inside the top 3 if anybody else makes a mistake and really want to get defensive at the end of the race.
I'm trying to see if Adam Watson has any sort of damage on that race car. I think he got away with that rather scot-free, not even seeing any sort of left-hand down or right-hand down action from the 291 cars. So avoided any sort of suspension tweaks, and even looking on the left-hand side of that race car as he buzzes past the camera. Looks like a little bit of ruffling up, but outside of that, and maybe picking up a couple of pounds of gravel, I think he got away with that rather scot-free. That could make a huge difference in terms of that battle, as you can see some more dust getting kicked up into the air. Alessandro Torchio dropped down a little bit. He drops behind Marley Joff to be in 6th at the present moment, but the 07 Racing Sim Race Lab car currently running in at 9th as it stands at the present moment, and not running in 9th, 9th, running in 6th. Take that 9 and turn it upside down. That's where Torchio finds himself in at the present moment. Aiden Carter, your AM leader, finds himself in P9 presently, but rapidly approaching the end of this race, Lorenzo, only a tick over 2 minutes left on the clock.
Yeah, insane 60-minute race with that with the 20-minute sprint feel of sorts, as everybody just decided to get a little very aggressive and try to fight for points. We saw that massive incident at the start that could have basically triggered a yellow flag, that could have blocked everything around the racetrack, but unfortunately we didn't have that, and the field strategy is kind of like playing out of sorts, but we didn't see a massive shift in the race with the field strategies, because I think by being a fact it's a 1 hour race, not a 3-4 hour race like we would have in endurance leagues.
2 laps left to go here at Monza for Jack Sedgwick to bring that number 11 machine home. This, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, will be his first win of this season, and what a way to do it as well. It's going to be a rather convincing gap for him if the race finished right about now. 16.5 seconds is a gap to himself and Lorenzo Castellani. I'm going to refrain from mentioning anything else, otherwise I will probably end up jinxing him, but he still finds himself in the overall race lead. Jonathan Walker has got away from the rest of the other Pro-Am drivers. That's as a bit of a cushion to himself and Alessandro Torchio for that Pro-Am lead, and Aiden Carter holding on to the AM class lead as it stands at the present moment. That would be 6 wins in a row for the driver of the 43 machine if he can just hang on. Seeing some side-by-side racing maybe going to flare up between Alessandro Torchio and Lewis Ward. They're not close enough to go side-by-side down into the Ascari chicane, but we may end up seeing that flare up between now and the checkered flag, which is coming up in the not too far off future. Jack Sedgwick has taken the white flag at the north end of the field, and when I say the not too distant future, I mean right about now, between Lewis Ward and Alessandro Torchio side by side down into Parabolica. He gets that move done to slip his way up into 6 as Aiden Carter and Dino Lombardi just swapped spots. Lombardi, a matter of a couple of laps ago, found himself in 12th, now up to P9. May not seem like much, but for the Pro Championship leader, that can make a big difference.
It's big for Lombardi, especially given the fact, like I said before, Davidson finds himself in 15th spot. So as I think Osborne are going to lose a few more positions to Lombardi and Carter respectively, so he's going to drop back outside of the top 10 and could lose one more spot, because I think Thurtle is not far behind. So but even though it's just one lap, a lot can happen. It's about nearly 5 kilometers in this racetrack, so looking forward to see how that is going to unwind. But P15 for Davidson, P8 for Lombardi. That is going to be big for the Grid and Go Esports driver, and that's just going to make his lead in the championship much bigger than it already is at this current moment.
And for Jack Sedgwick, it's going to be his second win of the season, and what a way to do it here at Monza. He won at Bathurst earlier on, and he wins here at Monza today. Jack Sedgwick, the winner of the second race of this technical round, wins the 13th race of the season with a gap in the teens between himself and Lorenzo Castellani. Castellani next across the line in a couple of moments as a side-by-side fight involving Jonathan Walker and Marley Jolf heading down into heading down into Parabolica for the final time. This is a battle for 4th, and look at that, Jolf sawing at the wheel, coming out of the final quarter, not close enough to get that move done. Jonathan Walker going to win it in the Pro-Am category in the number 88 machine. Did not look like he was going to get done, but he was able to withstand the challenge from the likes of Torchio and the likes of Adam Watson to win this race. Aiden Carter gets 6th in a row in the AM category, finishes this race in 8th, wins in the AM class. Got a 6th class win in the span of the past 6 races. That is a brilliant stretch that Aiden Carter finds himself in. Talk about a hot streak. Holy cow.
can someone? It's kind of funny that we cannot BOP drivers, right, Ron? But I think you can start to make a really good argument that for M class, Carter needs to BOP like heavily, so the others like can catch up. But nevertheless, doesn't take away the dominant championship that he's been having on M class.
As you can see, some drivers going 3 wide after the checkered flag. Richard Simnor, in the midst of all that, he finished 29th at the end of this race in the number 42 machine, waiting for a few more cars to cross the line. That's Steven Kernick, currently classed down in 36th at the present moment. But that was an awesome 13th race of this season. 60 minutes, and at the end of it, Jack Sedgwick is your winner in the INEX Racing number 11 Corvette. Wins it with a nearly 17-second gap to himself and Lorenzo Castellani at the end of it all. Castellani finishing in P2. Alex Cohen rounding out your overall podium in third. A brilliant day for the 07 Racing team. That's going to create a rather good opportunity for them to maybe grab the lead in the Team Pro point standings in the not too far off future. Jonathan Walker going to win it in the Pro-Am category in the number 88 machine. He finishes in fourth in front of Marley Joff, rounding out your top 5. Lewis Ward will finish in sixth. Alessandro Torchio, keep calling him Alessio, but he finishes in the 912 machine in seventh. Aiden Carter wins it in the AM category at the end of it all. His 6th win in a row in that class. His 6th win this season as well. He has been on a tear. Dino Lombardi, who won the first race, finishes 9th in the second. May not be the result that he had in mind, but considering some of the challenges for the drivers that he's involved in that championship battle with, still not going to mind that result at all. Arthur Thurtle set to round out your top 10 at the end of this race. Shaq Osborne, Eric Rosseth, Adam State, Adam Watson, and Alexander Davidson round out your top 15 in that direct order. The WSR cars finishing nose to tail in the form of Rosseth and State. Michael Avdolka is going to finish right behind in 16th. Aiden Young in 17th. Joe Newman, who we saw had that sideways snap a little bit earlier on, puts on a nice recovery drive and finishes in 18th. Dan McCauley and Michael Gray round out your top 20 at the end of this race. Looking right behind them, it's Kevin Simpson in 21st, David Mendolka in 22nd, James Boume in 23rd, Ben Altria in 24th, Jesse Payne Wilkins in 25th, William Guthrie finishes right behind him in 26th, Chris Shatterton finishes right behind Guthrie in 27th, Simon Andre Livingston in P28, Richard Simnor in 29th, David Baker rounding out your top 30. You only have a couple more cars left to go that finish on the lead lap. It ends off with Cameron DeBastos, Tom Stanley, Drew Fletcher in the number 26 machine, Adam Hedgecock in the number 13 machine finishes in 34th, and Jan-Man Pruis rounds out the cars that were in the top 35 and also on the lead lap. Stephen Kernick, Benjamin Gregory, Alessio Stephen Kernick and Benjamin Gregory 1 lap down, and then going from there, Alessio Benino 3 lap down, and 38th Josh Boot in the number 606 machine ends up right behind them. You can see a lot of the drivers a little bit farther towards the back did not finish this race after getting involved in some very early drama, but drama may have been the name of the game in this race at Monza. We are expecting some drivers to be a little bit dicey in this race, Lorenzo, and we certainly saw that more in race number 2 than we saw in race 1, but still an absolutely brilliant day of racing action.
No, it was brilliant, and I've always said this: Monza always delivers, right? It doesn't matter what kind of racing that you're gonna have. It is never a dull race. You always have overtakes here and there, so it's always a very entertaining race for us to commentate on. Nerve-wracking at points, but then again, that's the point of a speed racetrack, a draft-based racetrack, than anything else in the championship. But good to see Jack Sedgwick win a race. It's been a while I've seen him win a race, to be very honest. But it's always good to see the old dog winning once, teaching the new guys that he can teach them new tricks. But looking forward to see how Road Atlanta is going to be for the next round of the endurance it's here in the championship. But for now, we're just waiting on the drivers for the interviews, I think.
I think we're maybe going to hold off on the interviews potentially, because I don't see anybody there in the interview waiting area yet. I will say, though, I think my standout star at the end of all this is probably going to be Aiden Carter in the number 43 machine. His 6th win in the M category, an absolutely awesome race for him without a question or shadow of a doubt. He's been a quick driver. That Pro-Am category, always incredible to follow as well. And still no one in the interview waiting area, so I think we're going to switch our attention from this race at Monza to look ahead in 1 week's time, Road Atlanta, for the final endurance race of this season. 1 hour and 45 minutes of racing action to look forward to there, and that's going to be a heck of a lot of fun here on RaceSpotTV for the 14th race of this World GT Championship Season 17 from this series. Monza put on some instant classics of races, and hey, if you enjoyed the racing action, how about you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on any of the racing action. But as for this broadcast today of the World GT Championship, I think that will just about do it. So for myself, Ron Mons, Lorenzo Bonder joining me in the commentary booth, and Hugo Luis working all the cameras in the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for watching this broadcast on RaceSpotTV, and we hope to see you all wherever it is in the not too distant future.